comments from our director. Jason?
Good morning, all. It's dry for now. Certainly the rain and pending rain is on our minds, the minds of our staff, and certainly the public that are likely to be impacted. So just want to, make sure staff know we're thinking about them and we'll hope for the best over the next couple of days. And it seems we got several hot topics on the agenda. The room is full. This is exciting.
Good.
Yeah, a lot of hot topics. So anyway, we'll jump right into my director's report. Excited to start this off with an update about the MONAS state tournament. So more than 4,000 students competed in the state tournament on March 19th through the 22nd. This tournament has turned into one of the largest in-state tournaments across the country. Top scorer overall was Hillsborough High School student Wade Connor with 297 out of 300 in both the Bullseye and 3D competitions. Top school level teams in the Bullseye Championship included George Guthrie Elementary from Fenton, Ridgewood Middle School from Arnold, and Hillsborough High School. Top school level team in 3D Championship included Carl Junction Intermediate, Sarcoxie Middle School, and Hillsborough High School. Missouri has the top elementary team in the world. We also have 2 middle schools and 3 high schools in the top 10 in the nation in their respective divisions. Missouri has 24 individual Bullseye and 26 individual 3D archers ranked in the top 10 in their divisions. MONASP is coordinated through the Missouri Department of Conservation, the Conservation Heritage Foundation, the Conservation Federation of Missouri, the National Archery in the School Program, in partnership with nearly 800 participating schools and homeschool groups. Staff from branches across the agency teamed up for a smooth 1MDC effort for thousands of archers and their families who attended. The Conservation Heritage Foundation presented 20 scholarships totaling more than $30,000 to the top 5 overall female and male in both Bullseye and 3D tournaments. Scholarships awarded to students will be used for their education endeavors following high school graduation. And I have to give a proud uncle shout out to the young lady in the upper right corner, my niece, Miss Kendall Webb from Seagrass Elementary School. She won the elementary 3D and Bullseye, following in the footsteps of her brother Cooper, who won the boys elementary last year. So certainly a proud uncle moment related to archery in the schools. Speaking of awesome opportunities, had the opportunity to participate in the trout opener, which opened on a Saturday. Saturday trout openers are always a huge event and a huge success. The weather, while a little bit cool, was really good. We had a great turnout at many of our state parks participating in the trout opener. It's always good to see anglers returning to the parks. The stories and the family traditions associated with the trout opener are quite incredible. This year, the largest fish caught on opening day was 7.5 pounds at Roaring River. And then last week, Caleb and I took advantage of fishing opportunities at Bennett and sore-lipped a few trout. So things are definitely at full swing at our catch and keep trout parks. On the habitat management front, on the left, Ozark Region Regional Resource Management staff conducted multiple burn workshops. The picture here is of Howell County Workshop where the weather cooperated for once, so the participants were able to be actually involved in a burn. And I know our staff across the state have been giving a number of landowner burn workshops this year. On the right, St. Louis Region members worked with a local garden club, taking a field tour of pollinator habitat establishment on private land in St. Charles County through the MDC Landowner and Community Assistance Program. So staff continue to do great work with private landowners. On the public land front, staff of the Southwest Region, in cooperation with the Nature Conservancy Strike Team, conducted cedar removals of approximately 14 acres on the glades at Barclay Conservation Area, Kaufman Cave Conservation Area, and private property between the two areas. The Nature Conservancy worked with landowners to help them remove these cedars. On the right, staff at White Ranch Lake, which is a 6-acre lake south of West Plains plagued by turbidity, staff dissolved 16,000 pounds of gypsum in a 300-gallon tub, pumped the slurry into the lake via a 3-inch powered irrigation pump to reduce turbidity by 70%. Staff will be considering a follow-up application. Again, this is focused on improving water quality and hopefully the fishery. Another big hot topic in the state this time of year, bringing to the close our fall CWD sampling efforts. CWD sampling came to a close for the 24-25 season. We completed our targeted removal work as well, although I will note that we do continue to collect samples for sick or suspect animals throughout the year. So in total, Hunter harvested samples, which is our typical fall surveillance efforts. We collected more than 31,000 samples. Of those, 173 have tested positive. Targeted removals for this same time period included samples from just over 4,700 deer, and as of a few days ago, the number was 59 positives. We now are to 70 positives for a total of 243 positive detections of CWD this year. Included in this are 7 new counties, which are highlighted in red on the map on the right. So the question is what's the goal? What's the desired outcome here? And so many times with the low prevalence, folks often ask the question of what's the value of continued management? So recent research out of Wisconsin is starting to demonstrate the long-term impacts of the increasing prevalence of CWD on the landscape. What you see here in this graphic shows the change in prevalence in adult females in Wisconsin. So the results of a long-term research project. So as prevalence increases in adult females, on the x-axis you see the population growth. And so the dotted line is where you have basically, when you start a year, at the end of the year you have the same number of deer. So as prevalence of CWD increases, the population declines, population growth declines, and at this point in time they've identified 29% prevalence in adult females as that point at which the population is now in decline. So on the left-hand side, I promise we won't bore you with too many graphs, but on the left-hand side where that line is above the dotted line, that is where we have opportunity to harvest deer. There is a surplus of animals. On the right-hand side where it is below 1, it means that the population is in decline. And so we now have strong evidence that when populations reach a certain threshold of prevalence, the population, in fact, is likely to decline. And this is recently confirmed by results from from Arkansas. So Arkansas, in their core area, now have prevalence of adult females in excess of 30% and are reporting an annual population decline of more than 14%. And so again, this is why the low prevalence that we have today is a very, very good thing, and why we're working so hard to try to maintain that, because we are beginning to see population level impacts of chronic wasting disease in eastern white-tailed deer populations. Okay, moving on to community conservation efforts. On February 27th, MDC hosted the Kansas City Partner Luncheon. Over 100 attendees representing 52 community partner organizations attended the event. Representatives from local environmental organizations met at Anita Gorman Discovery Center to share the ways they are connecting with the community with nature. Attendees included the Heartland Tree Alliance, Deep Roots, American Farmland Trust, City of North Kansas City, City for Neighborhoods, Cultivate Kansas City, City of Grandview, Community Capital Fund, and many others. Again, a great way that our staff are working to bring partners together. Today is Missouri's 139th Arbor Day, which is dedicated to planting and celebrating and caring for trees. Today in St. Louis region, staff are encouraging cities, universities, and utility companies for their dedication to these trees. Over 200 people will attend the event to celebrate Arbor Day and Tree City USA program. Quick shout out to the great work that our conservation agents do on an annual basis. Pike County Conservation Agent Dirk Otterstein has been selected as the Mississippi Flyway Council 2024-25 Waterfowl Officer of the Year. The Mississippi Flyway Council includes 15 states and 3 Canadian provinces located in close proximity to the Mississippi River. Dirk will be recognized by the council later this year in Indiana during their summer meeting. So again, congrats to Dirk, and appreciate the recognition of all the great work that our team does. Speaking of new team members, 20 trainees officially began their journey to become conservation agents on March 16th with the start of the 25 Agent Training Academy. Training provided through the academy includes more than 1,000 hours of post-certification basic academy instruction. Instructors from various branches provide instruction to trainees on a wide range of law enforcement, wildlife management, conservation education, community engagement related topics during the academy. Protection branch may lead the academy, but it is truly a department-wide effort to prepare the new conservation agents to serve the citizens of Missouri. And the director's office had the opportunity to spend a few hours with them, and really excited about this group. Other really cool things on the horizon. So parents and kids will head to Jeff City for the 16th annual Missouri Governor's Turkey Hunt next weekend. This annual event is in cooperation with Governor Kehoe, the Conservation Federation of Missouri, the National Wild Turkey Federation, the Missouri Department of Conservation, Friends of the NRA, and private landowners. This year will be the 16th annual Youth Turkey Hunt. Kids will enjoy the afternoon of outdoor skills training with our staff and head to the governor's mansion for dinner before heading out to their host properties. Caleb and I'll have the great opportunity to join them at the mansion. So we wish you all our youth hunters success next weekend. The Hunt for the Good campaign. Earlier this year, MDC ran a social media marketing campaign in collaboration with the Council to Advance the Hunting and Shooting Sports. The campaign, called Hunt for the Good, was designed to raise awareness of the benefits of hunting among Missouri residents aged 18 to 34. With themes like Hunt for the Connection, Hunt for the Clarity, Hunt for the Wild, the campaign was a huge success, reaching approximately 5 million Missourians on platforms including Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Spotify. Relevancy branch is in discussion with the council and communication branch to consider another Hunt for the Good campaign in the next fiscal year. Our volunteers. So the Missouri Master Naturalist Program, a joint venture between the Department of Conservation and the MU Extension Center, recently released its calendar year 2024 report of membership activities and events. With 12 chapters around the state, a membership of approximately 880 volunteers, Master Naturalists in 2024 provided more than 75,000 hours of service to the Missouri conservation effort, including prairie plantings, management and seed collection, education and outreach programs, trail maintenance and assistance at CWD sampling stations during opening weekend in the firearm season. And I'll be headed down to the lake tomorrow morning to offer some words of great appreciation to our volunteers, and again, a reflection of this broader conservation community. We have hundreds of volunteers committing thousands of hours. It's exceptional. For the past couple of years, the department has worked with Cobalt Community Research to determine visitor usage at our conservation areas. Most recently, we received an analysis of the 1,000 plus conservation areas throughout the state. The data indicated that our conservation areas are quite popular, with 11 million total visits in FY24 alone. Our general conservation areas are certainly the most popular, accounting for approximately 44% of the overall visits, while our cap lakes and accesses represent about 19% of the visits, and lakes and river access is 14%. If we take a look at the top 10 conservation areas visited in FY24, it includes places like August A. Bush Memorial Conservation Area in St. Louis, James A. Reed Memorial Wildlife Area in Kansas City. Also popular are our hatcheries around the state, as well as our nature centers like Runge Nature Center just across the road. And our recreation team will be using this information with our regions and branches to continue to analyze the data and assist in ongoing management decisions across the state. We'll close with a few history notes. On April 1980, the Commission okays a contract with Ducks Unlimited for funding waterfowl nesting projects in southwest Manitoba, totaling $73,000. This is the start of the Fall Flights program, which we recognized full life cycle conservation and the importance of partnerships with our friends across the Canadian border in terms of producing wildlife. April 27th, 1960, a 3-day first turkey season in 23 years opened. 3 half days in 14 counties resulted in 94 birds harvested during that season. We've come a long way. At the April 25th, 26th, 1942 meeting, the commission approved sirens to open the trout fishing at our parks. So it goes back a long way. Some cases, starter pistols, in the case of Merrimack, cannon. So we have continued to evolve. And in 1938, a daily fee of 25 cents was imposed at 3 trout parks to help defray operating expenses and improve fishing conditions. This calculates to $5.83 in today's dollars. So trout fishing was a bargain in 1938, and it remains a bargain today. So with that, that concludes my director's report. But at this time, I would ask Tyler Swartz to come forward with the Conservation Federation. One of our staff members was recognized by them recently and was unable to attend the annual convention. So, Tyler?
Good morning, commissioners and staff. It's good to be with you this morning. On behalf of the entire Conservation Federation of Missouri, I'm honored to present the Wildlife Conservationist of the Year Award this morning. Mr. Joe Coy is a dedicated and innovative natural resource manager responsible for 2,360 acres of grasslands, including remnant prairies and reconstructed grasslands. His primary focus is maintaining and improving high-quality grassland habitats, which has led to the thriving of the grassland species like the bobwhite quail. Joe consistently employs unconventional management techniques such as aerial spraying, wicking, and altering burn frequencies to effectively control invasive species. In addition to his creative approach to land management, Joe works closely with a range of partners, including the Missouri Prairie Foundation, the Missouri River Bird Observatory, and neighboring landowners. His partnership with cattle producers, helping them convert cool season grass pastures to native grasses, is a key example of his ability to navigate financial challenges in land conservation. Joe's strong relationship and teamwork skills are a tremendous asset to the MDC team. His personal nature and work ethic are evident in his daily commitment to the job, and his contributions are highly valued by both coworkers and external collaborators. His dedication to the department and his innovative management practices make him an exemplary choice. I'm honored to present Joe Coy with the Wildlife Conservationist of the Year Award. Please come up, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. And, you know, as you certainly heard from our comments, Conservation Federation of Missouri continues to be a huge partner for us in so many endeavors on the conservation front. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my update. Unless there are any questions, I'd like to introduce our next presenters.
Commission, any questions for our director? Please proceed.
All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Brian Canaday, John Tuttle, and Travis McLean to talk about some of the extraordinary things that happened a few weeks ago as we continue to experience rather extreme weather conditions and in some ways unprecedented fire conditions. And so I'll turn the floor over to these gentlemen to talk a little bit about the exceptional work of our team.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. My name is Brian Canaday. I serve as our statewide resource management branch chief, and it's my pleasure and honor to come and give just a little bit of an introduction to the department's approach to fire and fire management. Travis McLean and John Tuttle will also present on different aspects of some very specific work that goes on every year, but some very unusual and specific work that has happened just this year. And so, you know, it's important for all of us to remember that fire is a very historic and natural process that's important to many of Missouri's natural communities. And so fire is really something that we need on the landscape. We use it to manage native plants and certain animals. And under prescribed conditions, you know, fire is very valuable. But when left uncontrolled, fire can damage both the natural resources and, quite frankly, a lot of property. And so the department really uses kind of a one MDC approach to fire, and it's really kind of can be boiled down into two steps, if you will, or two phases. Suppression, and that kind of is easily well defined, really to safely and efficiently suppress all uncontrolled wildfire and unwanted fire, and then prescribed fire. And we spend a lot of time and effort with prescribed fire, with training and practice and effort to make sure that we're using fire on the landscape appropriately. Even in conditions like today with this severe weather and wide-ranging weather extremes, we're constantly looking at fire, and I think you'll hear some of the extreme examples of things that we've been working with and dealing with this spring here in just a little bit. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach and, frankly, why. Why do we as an agency care about this? Why are we involved? Well, the department is involved because we were assigned responsibility for wildfire suppression under the Missouri State Forestry Law. Our state forester, Michael Bill, who you'll get to hear from a little bit later in the agenda, has that responsibility. And as a part of that, we have an employee, Ben Webster, who has been absolutely outstanding this spring with his leadership and his communication and guidance on our fire program. He's our fire program lead. Ben helps provide training for a lot of our staff. But under a certain state statute, we are responsible as an agency to assist with fire suppression across the state to protect life and property and protect those natural resources that we're tasked with managing. And it's for all things timber, wildlife habitat, and sensitive areas, including things like our streams and water quality. So it's very important to us. And so how do we do this? Well, we do this several ways. We do this through mutual aid agreements with obviously private landowners, but we do this with a lot of our fire partners, state, federal, non-governmental organizations, our fire departments. The really kind of a neat thing about this too is we have an opportunity to have our highly trained employees gain additional experience by working with other states on out-of-state fire. We've just recently worked on some additional guidance and clarity there for our folks that do go out state when they're called through our program to be able to go out and gain some very valuable experience, very valuable knowledge, leadership training, and in the unlikely event that we would have to use that here, they're ready to go. And frankly, we have had to implement some of that incident command and some of that fire suppression efforts even this spring here. And so that national training and that national leadership is really proving to be very valuable for us. And so our partnership really goes beyond, that on-the-ground firefighting. Our folks are very talented. They're very calm under this pressure. But we go out and we, of course, share our fire story. But we partner with a lot of rural fire districts in Missouri, well over 700. I think we're approaching maybe 800 rural fire districts where we partner with them to provide training, sometimes equipment through our rural firefighting center down in Lebanon to make sure that those folks in those volunteer fire departments in those communities can be that first responder to fire. And that really helps us. It helps us by taking a lot of that burden off of the department. There was a time in this agency really not that long ago where we may have been the first folks onto a fire until the rural fire districts got there. And so now we've done, I think, an outstanding job getting those fire districts outfitted through federal excess property and through trainings and other support. And they're really much better prepared to tackle fire locally, and then we provide some support to that, frankly. And so we've of course got a lot of training and curriculums. We go out with certain equipment that we've got, and of course a long-term education effort with Smokey Bear programs. I can't stress enough how important that is. It's a widely recognized program. Everyone loves Smokey Bear. It's a really big highlight at the state fair, but there's a great message in that too, and people seem to that resonates really well with our overall approach with our communications team. And so our fire program is something that we take very seriously here, and this spring has shown us why that's so important. So real quick, this is kind of my transition slide, and we'll jump to the next presenter, but I wanted to show this slide really not just because of this unique event, although this was an incredibly unique event on March 14th. It was a Friday. You can kind of see the wide-ranging map here, multiple states, and this big weather front that's come through. I'd love to tell you this is a unique thing that's really only happened once in my lifetime. We're starting to see this like pretty commonly, pretty regularly, and the storm events are coming more frequently with a higher intensity. And at times, the rain cells that are in those, the rain, hail, tornado, the wind shear, the threat that is within these storms are short-lived, short duration, but they're super intense, more than I can ever remember in my lifetime, and I'm old. So I can't stress enough how important it is for us to be watching these weather patterns. I mean, even today, you know, the director had made comments earlier about how we're watching the weather this weekend. Folks are on alert for this. At our hatcheries, we're seeing flood peaks that exceed records year over year now that we've never seen before. We're seeing fire intensities that we haven't seen in recent records. We're seeing large-scale weather events coming through Missouri, almost weekly this year, it seems like. Even this week, earlier this week, we had wind in the 60-mile-an-hour range, sustained winds. And so I've shared this up to talk about things like red flag warnings, high wind advisories, watching those weathers. It's really just setting the stage, and we're seeing some of these severe weather patterns come across this spring. And again, our well-trained folks across the agency. When we talk about one MDC, that's not necessarily a catchphrase. That's not just a mantra that we put up on the wall. It's something that luckily some of us get to see all the time. Our folks are best when there's something like this out in front of us. They come together, they work well together, and I think you'll see some great examples of that in the next few slides. And so with that, I'll have Travis come up. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director's Office. Travis McLean, I'm the Chief of Protection Branch. Here to talk to you a little bit about the Protection Branch response between March 10th and 17th to fire and severe weather. Pretty substantial response. You know, conservation agents are pretty key members of the local law enforcement and first responder community. So they interact with those folks every day, and with that, we provide a critical link for the rest of the department to those communities and those partnerships. But during the 10th through the 17th, we responded to 34 unique incidents in 15 counties on affecting 7 different department areas. And as Brian kind of mentioned, it's not a unique thing. We'll talk just this week, and we're geared up for this weekend as well. So we'll talk a little more about that here in a moment. But primarily, as far as Protection Branch fire response, conservation agents assisted rural to fire departments and MDC crews with fire suppression primarily, conducted traffic control, facilitated communication between MDC crews and local agencies, and provided and spoke to neighboring residents and assisted with evacuations. Just a few examples. In Boone County, Lieutenant Seavey and Agents Edson and Agents Cotter, they responded alongside RRM staff to a wildfire at Hart Creek Conservation Area. They transported equipment, provided interagency communication, and spoke with neighboring residents about what was going on. In Camden County, Conservation Agent Peyton Emery assisted the Highway Patrol and the Sheriff's Office and the Mid-County Fire Department with evacuating residents whose homes were being threatened by wildfire. This is an example of that fire right here. That's a photo from that. Along Mailhack Road near Max Creek in Camden County. And Corporal Mark Henry, he responded to 3 different fires with MDC crews in Douglas County. He helped coordinate activities between rural fire departments and other MDC resources. And in Dent County, Corporal Jason Midget responded to a large wildfire in Dent County. He assisted the Sheriff's Office and the County Fire Protection District with traffic control and helped to guide the MDC fire dozer and personnel into the location of the fire. So again, a lot of that coordination and just linked to the local first responder communities is a big part of what Protection Branch has done to link MDC crews to those other resources. We also responded to severe weather response on March 13th and 14th for tornadoes in the southern part of the state, primarily up through the southern part of the state, up through the St. Louis area. In the Howell and Oregon County areas, Captain Gerald Smith and Corporal Matt Franks conducted well-being checks in Howell County. They contacted approximately 50 residents, and this is one of those pictures from Ozark County and Oregon County of personal property that's destroyed. Fortunately, no one they contacted needed medical assistance. On the other side of the state, in Perry County, Lieutenant Chris Duran and Corporal Travis Phillips did similar activities in Perry County. Corporal Jacob Plunkett also assisted the Highway Patrol in Wayne County. There were 7 fatalities in the Wayne County area as a result of these storms. Assisted the Highway Patrol with the recovery of some individuals whose camper was thrown into the Black River, and helped to recover those victims of the storm. It still continues. 2 days ago in Kansas City and Southeast region, we provided response. Washington County Conservation Agent John Lowe assisted the Sheriff's Office with clearing debris from the roadway. And in Southeast region, several Southeast region agents responded to Advance, Delta, and other affected areas around those towns in Cape Girardeau County. Ironically, most of the Highway Patrol troopers were at a promotional training. So we really provided the key resources on managing traffic control and keeping open Highway 25, which is a main thoroughfare there. So emergency crews and power companies and fire and EMS could get through there. So really was glad to help our partners with the Highway Patrol. It's also important to note, I think it's very important to note that our staff live in these communities, and many of them were affected by these storms. Several of our agents in the Ozark region, either themselves or their families, were personally affected. So even through all that, trying to help their own families and take care of their own stuff, our staff are out there making sure that others are being taken care of as well. I'll note this photo on the right is our Oregon County Conservation Agents, Caitlin Davis. This is her rental house. That's her house, her residence. Fortunately, she wasn't home at the time. She was actually on leave, and she was in the state of Illinois with her personal vehicle, and her state truck had been involved in a fender bender, and it was in the shop being repaired. So minimal impact to department equipment and her own personal property. She's been able to find a new house and new place to live and everything, but it just illustrates that it does impact our staff at a personal level as well as the communities. So, thank you. Turned over to John.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumner, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Regional Resource Management response. I am the branch chief for the Regional Resource Management branch. I want to start out with my sincere appreciation to staff. Through the whole entire month of March, we have really been called above and beyond with our activities. A lot of staff was out all night. And I'll talk a little bit about the windstorms that we went through, ended up in basements, ended up having to leave far. So anyway, I really do appreciate staff. And it doesn't matter whether it's CWD, wildfire suppression, prescribed burning, helping with flood events. Our staff has always been really good about stepping up to the plate and helping others as needed. So I really do appreciate staff. The one MDC concept is live and well. Whether it's what Travis talked about, with protection, helping us with the fires, coordinating with the fires, whether it's Conservation Business Services, providing the Kodiak airplane to fly surveillance, where we picked up 3 fires that day, whether it's SRM going down from headquarters to help us with some of these wildfires, whether it's communication, helping us tell our story. We're all in this. Some way or the other, we're all responsible for helping put out the wildfires. What I want to talk about is more on what happened from March the 10th through the 16th, and then when my wrap-up slide will talk about what's happened since then. We experienced extreme fire danger, as Brian was talking about. We experienced winds that was blowing from 25 to 35 miles an hour and gusting all the way to 50 miles an hour. We had temperatures between 70 and 80 degrees. Our relative humidity was between 30% to 15%. Now, when you get those three conditions with the relative humidity in the teens, you cannot hardly put out the fire. You can't hardly do it. So it's extremely severe situation. We also experienced tornadoes and thunderstorms, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. In my 30-year career, I've never been out on a wildfire where I had to leave the wildfire because of tornado warnings, but we did have to do that. We, MDC staff, along with the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and these rural fire departments that Brian talked about, responded to 267 wildfires during that week. Over 20,000 acres were burnt, and we lost over 20 homes and structures during that week. A lot of them was down by the Lake of the Ozarks. Now, make it clear, MDC didn't respond to every one of these, and I'll talk about what MDC did respond to later on in my presentation. What was the Regional Resource Management Branch's response? I gotta say, the one MDC response. Over 90 trained staff responded to 83 wildfires during that week that we're talking about, which covered over 9,000 acres. Our Camden Fire Zone is a 12-county area that overlaps Kansas City, Southwest region, and Central region. They alone had 30 firefighters that responded to 42 fires during that period of time, which was a little over 66,000 acres. But not just the Camden Fire Zone, the other regions was occupied in this too. Northeast region, all the way up by Kirksville, they had dozens of MDC staff that assisted with a 150-acre fire near Milan. We had a 78-acre fire on Big Creek Conservation Area and a small fire on Sugar Creek Conservation Area. Okay, how do I advance? Okay, sorry, not too talented with this stuff. Okay, Ozark region, they responded to 19 fires covering nearly 1,500 acres. 300 of those acres were on conservation land. St. Louis region had 6 separate fires covering nearly 300 acres. Almost 180 acres was on River Round Conservation Area in Franklin County. Also had a fire on the Glassberg Family Conservation Area in the St. Louis region. Southwest region had 9 wildfires, consumed almost 600 acres. 78 acres was on Comstock Prairie Conservation Area. And staff also assisted the U.S. Forest Service with about a 180-acre fire near Cassville. Southeast region had 24 staff that responded to 5 fires that consumed almost 300 acres, and one of those fires we assisted the U.S. Forest Service on again, which is almost a 150-acre fire. What were some of the variables that the fire crews had to deal with? And I introduced that when I started my presentation. As you can see, extreme weather conditions had teams fighting fire 1 minute and then taking shelter another minute. Missouri Net reported that as many as 19 tornadoes hit the state, leaving widespread destruction in 27 counties. This was right on that Friday that we was talking about. In the Ozark region, 2 crews, and you'll see in the center picture where our Rolla crew had to take shelter in a landowner's basement. Sarah Medlock called me on the phone and said, "I'm telling our crews to stand down and head to shelter. Just want to let you know." And I said, "That is absolutely Safety is number one. So we left these fires burning and headed to shelter. And some of those fires, where they didn't threaten somebody's structure, we let them burn all night and picked them back up the next morning because we simply could not be out there in that weather. This is the one that in Dent County that Travis was talking about. We did go back because it was threatening houses after we got out of shelter. We also had another crew that took shelter at the Indian Trail Conservation Area's house. There's a basement at that house, took shelter there. In St. Louis region, we had 2 crews that had to take shelter. One crew took shelter at our Leesburg shop, which was not a very good place to take shelter, but we did. And then we took shelter in the Eureka Fire Department. Southeast region told all their crews to stand down, leave the fire, go find shelter, and they did. And a lot of those would come back the next day and put the fires out. So what are we doing now to move forward? Of course, we're still dealing with wildfires, but we're also worrying about the floods that we're talking about this weekend. So we're worrying about that. We did mobilize staff from the Northeast region and the Southwest regions to the Ozark regions to relieve tarred and weary firefighters. Danny Hartwig and crew come down from the Northeast region and went to the Southeast region and the Ozark region, and we sent people home. People that have been working for multiple days, we sent them home. We also had, you'll see in the picture on the upper right-hand corner where the Southwest team sent the crews over to do the same thing in the Ozark region. So that's our bulldozer and our staff headed over there to relieve crew. We also had other regions ready to do the same thing but did not need their service, but have to give them credit. Kansas City, Central, and several others was ready to send staff to help our staff out. Okay, some stats that I wanted to share with you before I wrap up is you may be saying, okay, he just talked about what happened from the 10th through the 16th. Well, what's happened from the first of the year and now? So I wanted to give you those stats. From January the 1st through April the 1st, the state had 886 wildfires, and MDC had responded to 129 of those wildfires, which had consumed over 40,000 acres of land. And what MDC responded to was almost 17,000 acres. What you'll see is when they call us, it's usually to the bigger fires. The fire departments usually put out the 1, 2, 5, 10 acre fire. The week after March the 10th to the 16th, which I'm talking about the 17th to the 23rd, was a bad week also. So Missouri Firefighter Resources responded to 212 fires the week after. MDC responded to another 41 fires that week after. So in summary, we have experienced a very high fire danger month, probably one of the highest in my career. We've seen some really bad years, such as 2012, which was really prolonged. But the month of March was about as severe as I've seen the month of March in my career, because the month of March was really, we was really tasked, and those 50-mile-an-hour winds was happening a lot. So we really experienced extreme high fire danger in the month of March. Staff did an outstanding job working with partners and each other to suppress these fires, and I'm extremely pleased with their efforts. And that's our presentation. Any questions for Travis or myself? I think Brian had to leave.
Excellent. Well, John, Travis, Brian, thank you gentlemen so much for this presentation illustrating the one MDC approach. I think you said it, John, just a huge thank you to staff. We can't control the weather, but we can control how we respond, and this was really illuminating. Commission, any questions? Mark?
Where do we stand with FEMA and SEMA as far as declaration and either state support or federal support on some of the costs incurred?
I don't know that answer right now, but we can get back with you on it. I know SEMA did send a incident command down
Okay.
towards, I guess, Douglas County. So we went down and met up with SEMA on that, but I do not know about the declaration.
Okay.
But we can find out and get
Okay,
back.
thank you very much. And then, very interesting presentation. From the month of March, you never think about wildfires in March, do you? I mean, is that,
Oh, yeah.
is that pretty common?
March is usually Missouri's wildfire season.
Okay,
So it'll start as soon as the snow melts off in February
okay.
and run until green up.
okay,
And usually about the second week of turkey season is when green up really happens.
Okay,
We're
so
greening up right now.
things
in
are
the
still dry
area.
before that point then,
But the
right?
woods aren't greened up really, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And so, but right now with all this rain, hopefully the
Right.
green up's gonna happen a
Yeah,
lot quicker.
yeah. So you've got rain to suppress the dry conditions, so.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Commission, any other questions, comments? Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for that
Thank you.
presentation. At this time, Commission, I would direct your attention to our consent calendar, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion? Anything that we need to pull off? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Next on our agenda, I'd like to welcome Deputy Director Laura Conley.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. Recall in December, the Commission voted to approve recommendation for proposed changes related to cervid carcass disposal and transport. Following the Commission's initial consideration, the proposed rulemakings were filed with the Secretary of State's Office for publication in the Missouri Register, and that initiated a 30-day public comment period. 7 stakeholder comments were received, all in general support, with no further changes being recommended. A summary of these comments is included in the final orders of rulemaking provided in your packet. If approved, the effective date of these 3 rulemakings will be June 30th, 2025. Madam Chair, unless the Commission has any questions or concerns, I request approval for the final orders of rulemaking related to cervid carcass transport and disposal with no changes to the original recommendation.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I? This is an issue that is on the public's mind. Deer carcass on the side of the road and so on. In short, what is this regulation for the public who might be viewing this?
Yeah, so we have had cervid carcass transportation restrictions in our regulations as part of the deer hunting season. So if you're in a CWD management zone county, that whole carcass could not leave the county unless it was taken directly to a processor or any of those parts taken to a taxidermist. So what these do, they rescind those transportation restrictions and create carcass disposal requirements, which the intent is to make it easier to manage for hunters that may need to process deer in other locations, to move them out of those management zone counties, but establishes the disposal requirements so as not to leave potentially contaminated carcass components on the ground where other deer may encounter it.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Great question. Please proceed.
Thank you. The Regulations Committee met on February 27th to review recommendations to establish season dates, harvest quotas, and permit quotas for the 2025 black bear hunting season, recommendations to establish season dates and permit quotas for the 2025 elk hunting season, and recommendations to establish seasons and limits for migratory game birds and waterfowl for 2025 to 2026. These recommendations are being brought forward for Commission consideration today, along with a recommendation for a proposed amendment to modify 3 CSR 10-4.130, Owner May Protect Property, Public Safety. Commissioners, with the exception of the proposed amendment, all recommendations brought forward today establish season dates and limits which are not subject to a public comment period, and if approved, will be filed as final orders of rulemaking. Included in your packet are orders of rulemaking to establish season dates along with permit and harvest quotas for the 2025 black bear hunting season with an anticipated effective date of April 15th, 2025. At this time, I'd like to invite black bear biologist Nate Bowersock to the podium to present the recommendations. Nate has a master's degree in fish and wildlife management. His master's work focused on the movement and density distribution of black bears in relation to resource availability in northern Yellowstone. He's been working for MDC as the department's black bear and fur bear biologist since April of 2022. Nate, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for having me today, Commission. Today I'm going to present to you some of the results from the most recent black bear hunting season, and then the hunting recommendations I have for our upcoming 2025 season. So we had another successful hunting season this year. We provided opportunity for Missourians to hunt black bears in the state. We saw almost 6,000 residents apply for 400 of the permits we made available this year. Of those that were selected, we saw roughly 80% of the folks that were drawn purchase their tags and take advantage of this opportunity. And we saw 15 bears harvested this year. This is the most bears we've seen harvested in a hunting season so far. BMZ 1, which is where our highest bear densities are, and it's where we see the most harvest each year, had the most harvest. But then we did see 3 bears harvested in BMZ 2. And Texas and Phelps counties, those were counties that saw their first bear harvest since the establishment of our hunting season, with Phelps County being the farthest north we've seen a bear harvested so far. So a lot of firsts this year, or this past season, which was exciting to see. We saw this year that 66% of the bears harvested were males, 30%, and then 33% were females. 13 bears were harvested with firearms, while the remaining 2 were harvested with archery equipment, 1 with a bow and arrow in BMZ 1, and 1 with a crossbow in BMZ 2, which I believe is also our first crossbow harvest of the seasons we've had. So again, many firsts, which has been exciting to see. More and more folks are participating on multiple levels with this hunting season. And we also saw a marked bear harvested. And so this each season we have seen at least 1 or more bears that have been marked through our marking and research efforts be harvested, which is great because this is data for us to help just track what's happening with our bear population and understanding what their fates are, in some cases being harvested. And then we saw that a majority of our bears were harvested on public land. We kind of see private land, excuse me. We see this kind of shift back and forth between the seasons. Some years we see slightly more on public, slightly more on private. This year, most of the bears are actually harvested in Douglas County, all on public land, so that's probably why we see that skew this year. As we have done in previous years, after our season was completed, we sent all the hunters that were drawn for the bear hunting season a post-season survey. And this is what we use for most of our hunting seasons to assess, hunter effort, hunter success rates, but also get a general idea of their satisfaction with our regulations to help us maybe make some adjustments to the seasons down the line. So one of the first things we saw, and this has been a fairly consistent pattern we see with our hunters, is that our season starts on the 3rd Monday of October, and we see fairly consistent and high participation rates at the beginning of the hunting season. And then once we get past the weekend, so this arrow marks the Monday, the following Monday of the week, we see participation rates drop quite a bit. I will note that we do see hunters purchasing their tags pretty much through the hunting season. So some people are buying them all the way up to the last day of the season, and we did actually see the last bear of this season harvested on the last day. So throughout the season, we're seeing different activity levels and whatnot. And then also, we see, this is also another pattern we see a lot of, is that, either a lot of folks are hunting on public land or a lot of folks are hunting on private land, not much in the middle. Last year we did see a little bit of a spike of folks doing a mix of public and private land hunting, but this year was pretty much one or the other. As far as how much time folks spent out scouting, we saw a majority of folks were spending less than 5 days out looking for bear sign. And of the hunters that were successful this year, they spent at least 3 or more days scouting. This is a little lower than what we have been seeing. Traditionally, we've been seeing about 70% of successful hunters spend 6 or more days out scouting for sign. So it's a slight change, but not a big deal. Means they just were doing a lot better finding places to hunt. And the bigger thing, though, that I thought was great was that our hunters actually saw a lot more found sign while out looking for bears. Typically, it's almost a complete switch, where we see only 30% of hunters finding sign of bear activity while out hunting. This year was actually flipped, which is really, really great to see. And yeah, so part of that too, I think plays into our hunter satisfaction. When we ask hunters about, were you satisfied with the hunt? We did see that we had more of a satisfaction with the hunting season. And one of the things we asked hunters, what would make your hunt more enjoyable? It was finding sign of bears or seeing them, and we did see that. So I would say overall we had another successful season with harvest and satisfaction. Now, with that all in mind, we've had 4 hunting seasons now, and we've kept our regulations pretty consistent through all those seasons. We've had a 40 bear harvest quota limit, and this is, to put in perspective, this isn't a quota that we're seeking to meet. It's the limit that we would allow to be harvested during the hunting season. We have been making 400 permits available each year that are distributed based on bear management zones, allocating 10% of tags to qualifying landowners, and then our quotas are distributed based on permits per area. The season has been a 10-day season starting the 3rd Monday of October each year. We have not allowed bait or dogs. And overall, the objectives of the hunting season is to provide hunting opportunity. We're not looking to use it as a tool for management right now. Potentially down the road, as our population grows, that things might switch. But right now, we're just about providing opportunity for Missourians to hunt bears in the state. Now, given the current regulations and the bear management plan that we have in place, our 2020 to 2030 bear management plan, it states that we essentially want to provide hunting opportunities for the public, but also allow our bear population to continue to grow and expand across the landscape. Looking at harvests on the last 4 years, we have yet to reach our harvest quota limit. We've seen folks successfully harvesting bears, but we haven't come close to needing to close down our seasons early or even any bear management zones. So given the results we've seen the last 4 years, it seems like there's opportunity now to maybe make some adjustments to the hunting regulations to continue to provide opportunities for folks to hunt while still meeting the goals and objectives of the bear management plan we have in place. So as I keep mentioning, our big thing is we want to continue to allow our bear population to grow and expand. And so with our current regulations, or with our current goals, we want to make sure we keep with that trend. I would suggest that we would not change our quota for our season. And so with that in mind, if we run our simulations that if we were to have all 40 bears harvested this upcoming year following the modeling approaches we have in previous seasons, that the 40 bear harvest limit, if it were ever reached, it would not have a negative impact on the growth rate of our black bear population. And so this would continue our conservative but a sustainable approach to our bear hunting season. So we continue to provide the opportunity to hunt, but still allow the bear population to grow. Now, when we think about the length of our hunting season, we following that kind of conservative approach, we established the hunting season to only be 10 days in length. And we can see from what we continue to see is that we see a lot of activity at the beginning of the hunting season, but then it tapers off, especially because we only have one weekend that the hunting season goes across. And considering most people don't have the ability to take a lot of time off, this potentially is limiting folks' ability to get out there and take advantage of the hunting season. The other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of our hunters are having to travel at least 100 miles or more to their place that they were drawn for their hunting season. And so when we have, from our survey, when folks have talked about why they aren't buying their permits, or they buy their permits, but then when the season comes around, they don't go out and participate, they cite not having enough time, or the drive time to get to where they need to hunt is too far away. So, as I mentioned, our hunting season only currently overlaps one weekend. So I would recommend that we extend our hunting season to overlap 2 weekends, and then also extend the length of the season. So go from a 10-day season to a 14-day season, so we're adding 4 more days, which provides more time, and then also 2 weekends, so folks potentially wouldn't have to take as much time off of work to get out there and take advantage of this opportunity. So I propose that the season would start the Saturday before the third Monday of October. And this would allow the season to fall between the early antlerless firearm season and it would finish right before the youth firearm deer season, so there wouldn't be any overlap between our bear hunters and deer hunters. And this would, as I keep mentioning, this would provide more time for folks to get out there to scout, get out there to hunt, and potentially then to purchase their tags that we have been seeing some tags going unpurchased, which might be related to not having the time or the ability to get down to those hunting zones. Then the next thing is our hunter participation. So we have been seeing across our 4 hunting season between 15 and 20% of tags are going unpurchased each year. And then when we ask hunters, did you even get out hunting? We've been seeing around 13% on average of hunters aren't going out and taking advantage of this season. And, since we are seeing this consistency and folks not purchasing tags or participating, seems like maybe we can make some additional adjustments to the season. And part of that would be providing more tags. If you put between the tags not purchased and participation rates, we're seeing 20 to 30% of hunters that are being drawn for the hunt aren't taking advantage of this opportunity. So I'm proposing that we move from 400 tags to 600 and then distribute those evenly. So BMZ 1 would go from 200 tags to 300, BMZ 2 would go from 150 to 225, and BMZ 3 would go from 50 to 75 tags. And we'd still allocate 10% of those tags to qualifying landowners. The hope is that this would increase participation rates, but as we move forward in time with this increase in tags, if we continue to see proportional participation rates, then I think we could start looking into other avenues as far as making tags available to folks. But given the unknown effects of increasing the number of hunters we have in the woods, I think it would be beneficial for us to see how this change in the number of tags influence success rates for the next season or two before we start making bigger adjustments to tags that are available right now or some sort of reallocation. That has been something that's come up, but this point, MDC has not reallocated tags in the past. Not that we can't do it, but before we go to those lengths, I think it would be good for us just to see what an increase of potentially 200 additional hunters in the woods looking to harvest black bears might look like. So in summation, putting all this together then, this year I would recommend that we would maintain our 40 bear harvest quota limit, that we would have 600 tags made available this year with 10% allocated to qualifying landowners, that our season be 14 days in length, and it would start, this year would start October 18th and run till Halloween, October 31st. We continue to not allow bait or dogs, which is consistent with our other hunting seasons already for other large game. And the hope is that the season adjustments and increase in tags will help provide opportunities while still maintaining the goals and objectives of our bear management plan. So with that, I just wanted to follow things up real quick just to provide some updates for the black bear program. So we conducted a statewide hair snare study starting in 2022, and we conducted 2 years of sampling, and we collected over 1,000 hair samples. And the hopes continues to be that we will be using this information to generate a new population estimate, which we want to then use to help inform potential changes in our quotas down the line. Unfortunately, there's been some issues getting our samples off to the labs that we want to analyze these samples. I just got word this week, though, that the samples are now on the way to where they need to go. So thank goodness we should hopefully have some answers sooner than later. This is becoming a real pain, and unfortunately, with stuff out of my control. I wish I could have controlled this, but but it is what it is. But anyways, I'm hoping we'll get some more answers, and this information will be really great. Not only will it give us a new population estimate to just see how we've been doing tracking the bear population, but it'll also provide really great information on the density distribution of our bear population, which we can use to help inform bear management in the future, and then also our education outreach activities. And then the other piece I wanted to bring up is that, we a few years back, we also conducted a human dimension study asking the public, what are your thoughts about bears in Missouri? Per the bear management plan, that we hope to put out these surveys every 5 years just to gauge how Missourians feel about bears, and based on these results, maybe we can help also inform our regulations. But when we first put this survey out, we saw right away folks in Missouri are very positive. They find that it's very important to have black bears here in the state. And with that, then we're hoping in the next year to conduct the next survey. So the first one was in 2021. We're hoping to conduct the next survey in 2026 to be consistent with our bear management plan. And like I said, this will help inform outreach and bear management. Looking at some of the other results real quick, I got a couple more here for you. In general, do you support or oppose having black bears in Missouri? Very strong support for having black bears in the state. And then if you encountered a bear, did you have a positive or negative encounter? And most folks had a very positive outlook on those. And this includes folks that have actually called us and had conflict come up. There's definitely frustration, but they still are in support of having bears on the landscape despite potential conflict. Then asked about, what the status of our bear population. Too many, too few, and we saw that folks thought we had about right or were too low. So generally speaking, folks are definitely supportive of the population continuing to grow and expand. And then lastly, what do you think of how the agency is doing with bear management? And we have very great support at this point. So my goal is to continue to have this support for that, and that means, continuing these surveys, continuing to do more research and monitoring of our bear population, because that'll help inform decisions to maintain these positive outlooks on our bear population. And then finally, I just wanted to mention too that one of the things that has been asked of myself and the Black Bear Working Group is to establish some population benchmarks, essentially benchmarks of how we guide our management of our bear population into the future. So because of how all the things we need to think about for bears, we've actually have some sub-working groups of the Black Bear Working Group now. And so the Black Bear Monitoring and Research Sub-Working Group put together some framework for these benchmarks this September. The things that were found to be most important to the group were the ecological carrying capacity, so essentially the amount of resources on the landscape that can sustain a healthy and positive bear population, the social carrying capacity, so how many bears does the human population here, what do Missourians tolerate before they have a negative view on the bear population? And then the population growth rate, is it growing, is it decreasing? And we thought that it was important that to keep these three factors in mind, it was very important that we utilize our human dimension studies on a rotational period, have our new population estimate, and then also take in consideration the annual conflict calls. We have seen steady, but not very, I say steady increases, but not that it's like skyrocketing, but we see, a few increased conflict calls each year, but part of that's just the fact that we have more bears each year. And they're just showing up in new areas that people aren't used to, and so that's part of our outreach activities, is to try to help educate people and prepare them for if a bear does show up and starts getting into chickens, what do you do, how do you prepare? So our thoughts is that if we utilize our different monitoring tools and review these things every 3 to 5 years, we can use these to gauge how we should set our regulations in the future, and also help dictate how we reach out to the public. Definitely have to give a shout out to our communications crew right now. They're doing some really great work with our Bearwise materials to put out radio ads and social media posts, and really getting the word out there to just let people know about our bears and how great they can be, but what to do if bears do show up. So with that, if we have time, I'll take any questions you might have.
Excellent. Thank you, Nate. Commission, any questions for Nate?
Yeah, I have some questions. I'm curious, how frequently do we have people-bear conflict interactions, and how do you deal with them?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm going to the Eastern Black Bear Workshop next week to represent the department. So we've been sitting around, I think it's around 100 calls a year. But what those calls range from is just a bear in the yard to getting into a bird feeder, getting into chicken coops. So what happens is we do get calls through our black bear sightings program we have online, or we just get phone calls. And what happens is when we get those phone calls, typically it comes to me. I'll call our local damage biologist, and then they'll respond. But also protection staff has also done a really great job that when they receive those calls, they reach out to the public and try to resolve those calls as soon as possible.
How many incidents a year do you have typically, did you say, or did you say that?
I think we're around 100, but as far as like property.
But relocating them or something like
So
that?
we don't relocate any bears, and luckily I don't think we had to, I can't remember if we had to euthanize. No, one bear was shot that was getting into chickens last year, but that was by a citizen. But as far as the department, we did not have to do any captures of conflict bears last year. But we've been it's probably every other year we've been having to at least capture a bear to haze it, if not euthanize it.
I know we got some letters on the reallocation of tags or requesting that, that 10%. I'm kind of curious how you came to that conclusion to just increase the quota on those, because I suspect we're probably going to have even a higher incidence of not claiming tags. And my question kind of revolves around, we talk all the time about maximizing opportunity for the public. And I think this year was the highest harvest, and it's about 38% of what, but you feel very comfortable with the quota that we have as far as that sustaining the population. Have you ever considered making this an over-the-counter tag to where then when we fill the quota, it closes? If you're that confident with, the population quota that you've set? I mean, it seemed like that would maximize opportunity for the public.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And I guess the thing that comes to mind is that part of having a limited amount of tags is that it provides the hunters the time to think about if they do have a bear show up, if they want to harvest that animal. When you have cases where it's just over the counter, and you got everyone and their brother out there in the woods, and then you have a limit set, there's potential that the quota could be hit in the first day. And then all those other folks that put the time into scout, look for animals, the season's done early. And so part of the number of tags that we have made available, limiting that, is to partially just provide the hunters the ample opportunity to get out there to scout and then to go out there and hunt. And because we do have that quota, that quota limit there, if we were to, once we reach it, the season's over. And so we don't know what where that line is of when you have X amount of hunters in the woods, how quickly harvest rates go up and how quickly we would reach that quota. And so taking a slower approach, yes, it might be limiting some opportunities, but at the same time, having some of those limits in place, it is providing opportunity, but also provides those hunters the time they need to have a enjoyable hunt versus getting out there and then having to rush to a shot or thinking they have all the time in the world to select the animal they want, and then all of a sudden we hit our quota and the season's done earlier than expected.
And I appreciate the thought, and the reason I asked the question, I've had a couple of my friends that are private landowners, and they've have several bears on their property but can't ever draw a tag, and so maybe a blend of over-the-counter on the private land, where you wouldn't have a crowding conflict problem or something might be a consideration in the future.
Yeah, when we did, the Black Bear Working Group we talked about this in depth, and we did talk about, potentially having over-the-counter reallocation. But part of the whole permitting part is we want it for residents only, and we've already had some folks try to scam the system to get tags that weren't actually Missouri residents. And so giving permit services, protection time to do the checks, make sure that the folks applying are actual residents. If we were to reallocate tags, we'd have to find some sort of timing of when we would make those tags available. And then setting a time, say like September 1st, well, now everyone that gets a reallocated tag, they have now almost 2 full months less than everyone else to get out scouting. And so I think as we move forward and seeing how increasing tags influences success rates, participation rates, I'm not against it. I don't think anyone's against that idea, but I think we want to see how increasing tags to start with at this limited level works. And then if we see participation rates staying the same, then maybe we do look at reallocation or have a certain date where we do make them over the counter. But I think it's important for us to still take this kind of conservative approach with this season so that we can learn from and make decisions based on the information we have.
One last question, obviously this topic, and just a sidebar is, it's really exciting on this, because this is one of the decisions we made as a commissioner while I've been on it was in this season, so pretty exciting that and the elk. But on those unallocated tags, I know that in some instances, you could potentially have individuals that are applying for those tags that are not supportive of a bear season, that they're doing it intentionally to take away from the allocation. I know that we deal with that in some of the other states where I apply, for tags, with the intention of never getting one because they want to take the opportunity away from someone else. Do we survey these people to see why they didn't claim the tag, just for information?
Yeah, that's one of the questions, and that was what I was bringing up in there, or what I tried to flesh up there, is that in many cases it's the not having enough time too far away from the hunting, from where they're hunting. There is a question like, I don't want to participate. We haven't had anyone mark that, but there's I think 10-ish responses to give. I just provided the 2 top ones. But yeah, no, that I get that call regularly from folks that, hey, what about some people that are against the hunting season? I guess just running numbers, thinking about it statistically. So we have tentatively 6,000 people apply. You have a 1 in 10, 1 in 12 chance of applying. We would have to have a significant amount of those people applying to be anti-hunters,
Sure.
to be absorbing that. So not to say there aren't folks that are doing that, but just breaking the numbers down and the excitement we see from folks, I'm not seeing any sort of pattern that's occurring. What I do get phone calls though is I got several phone calls this year of folks, I broke my leg, I just came down with pneumonia, and I can't get out there, can you do something for me? It's like, well, unfortunately, we just don't have things in place, and life stinks, so it's unfortunate. One guy literally got in a car accident the day before and broke his arm, and so that really stinks that his hunting season was over. But I think that kind of stuff is more what's probably and is occurring than this anti-hunting movement swarming, because Missourians are into hunting and they're really excited about this. So I just don't think it's a factor as of now.
Okay. Yeah. Great presentation, really enjoyed it. It's a topic I enjoy.
yeah, happy to present to you guys again.
Yeah, Nate, I just want to highlight the farmer survey work that you do. You have a pretty high response rate to that farmers, or the hunter survey, don't you?
Yeah, this year we did see a slight tick down again, but overall, compared to some of the other surveys that I'm responsible for overseeing or getting the results and doing something with this, the black bear hunting survey, we do see pretty high response rates, which is nice. It helps us make these decisions.
Thanks goes to our hunters, doesn't it?
For sure.
Excellent. Commission, any other questions for Nate?
Madam Chair, just maybe a quick question, observation. I noticed your slides with the density of the population of the deer, and I saw dot points moving up into the St. Louis region and probably as much Kansas City region. Someone said to me a while back after I had gone through the woods and saw a black bear, mother and 2 cubs, what part of a good idea is it, Ray, that you're trying to bring back black bears in the state of Missouri? In jest, this person said. And I simply said, well, have you looked at the state seal of Missouri? Okay, bear are a part of our heritage. But that didn't really answer the question. And your attitude, your survey on the attitude of the population, it'll be interesting to see where that goes, to me, in 5-10 years as the bear population grows. And there have been stories or two about bear that have worked their way up Highway 44 and ended up in Kirkwood and places like that. Just for, again, those viewers of this meeting, in 30 seconds or less, what would be a comforting thing for those who wonder about bear, don't know bear, see TV movies where grizzly bears have a different personality, but a black bear is a different personality from more aggressive grizzly. But anyhow.
Yeah, I guess kind of the quick talking points. One, at the end of the day, black bears are just looking for food and moving on. And so, and giving them space is always important, but securing food items is very important. But the big thing is bears are very important for the ecosystems. One, they're a kind of a indicator species of the health of the forest. If a forest is healthy, you typically see black bears there. They also help in many of the ecological processes. They help with breaking down timber in the forest. So when trees fall down, they break those up because they're full of insects, and bears love to feed on those things. They also are great seed dispersers. A lot of our fruiting plants, they wouldn't be spread as far as they were if it weren't for animals like bears feeding on them and spreading those seeds across the landscape. And then also helping with cleaning up the forests as far as just carrion. They feed on that as well. And so bears really help with the rejuvenation of an ecosystem, and having them there is good for the ecosystem, but also is just telling us that we're doing a good job managing our forests, and it's healthy to support them.
Well, thank you. I applaud the program. Don't make any mistake, and I look forward to staying in touch and hearing all about it as it continues to grow and become more popular.
Yep, great question. Nate, thank you so very much.
Yes.
Deputy Director.
Thank you, Nate. Madam Chair, Commission, I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.900, black bear hunting season general provisions, and 3 CSR 10-7.905, black bear hunting season application and draw process as presented.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendations? Do I have a second? Any discussion?
Just one quick one. You were going to have 3 CSR 10-4-130. Is that included in that, Laura, or is that a different place?
No, that will be at the end of the presentations. That'll be separate as a proposed amendment.
Okay, thank you. I just saw it in the narrative, so,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Great clarification. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, your packet also contains recommendations for final orders of rulemaking for 3 CSR 10-7.705, elk hunting season, and 3 CSR 10-7.710, elk application and draw process, with an anticipated effective date of April 15th, 2025. Here today to provide additional background and details on these recommendations is Aaron Hildreth. Aaron has worked for the department for almost 9 years in the position of cervid biologist. He received his bachelor's in science in fisheries and wildlife from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and his master of science from the University of Kentucky, where he studied the physiological effects of the reintroduction process for the elk that were translocated to Missouri and Virginia in 2012 and 2013. Aaron has also spent time researching various ungulate damage mitigation techniques and ungulate diseases. Aaron, the podium is yours.
Welcome, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
It's good to be here. So, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. So yes, it is my pleasure to talk today on elk. So, quick rundown, talk about season summaries for the first 5 elk hunting seasons here in Missouri. A brief reminder on the antlerless framework that was approved by the Commission here last September. Provide a brief population status update, and then provide the season date and permit quota recommendations for 2025. So, as I mentioned earlier, we are 5 years into elk hunting here in Missouri. So it truly is a great conservation success story. For each of those 5 years, we have had 5 antlered elk permits. The first 2 years, 5 of 5 were filled, and for the 3 most recent years, 3 of 5 were filled. And it's worth pointing out, the young lady there on the right is the first lady to be drawn for an elk permit here in Missouri, and is also the youngest elk hunter. So she has an absolutely spectacular bull there and was tickled to death. So a great hunt. Yes. So yeah, it was all the credit to Ms. Budnick there on that. So she had
Fantastic.
a fantastic hunt.
Fantastic.
So as we look at so both archery and firearm methods are allowed depending on which portion of the season. 6 of the 19 permits have been filled with archery methods. The remainder have been filled through firearm methods. So back in September of 2024, the Commission approved the framework for antlerless elk hunting. And so given the timeline with our regulation cycle, the ability to quickly do something isn't something that's really very easy to do. And so by getting the regulatory framework in place beforehand, it allows us, once the population is ready, we are then able to propose a permit quota recommendation. So we're also very cognizant of the need to keep regulations as simple as possible and within reason as consistent as possible. And so that was something that we strove to do with the antlerless framework, make it mirror the antlered framework in as many places as possible. As we also always try to do, we wish to incorporate opportunities for the public to provide feedback on those regulations and to impact what those final regulations look like. And so with antlerless framework, this was no different. In particular, we sought public input on what the sit-out period would look like between antlered and antlerless permits, and then what that application process would look like as far as whether or not applicants could apply for both antlered and antlerless permits in the same year. When we look at population trajectory, so this is from our accounting style model. As you look going back to 2013 through present, so roughly the middle of the screen, you'll see that that line is increasing, but it's increasing at a much slower rate than what the model projects for the upcoming 5 or so years. There is probably a bit of discrepancy. Realistically, what we've seen in the past is probably closer to reality as far as population growth, despite the fact that this model does project a faster growth rate. When we look at this model and we compare it to our aerial survey data, so the blue line is the actual number that are observed. That model is adjusted for a variety of factors. So for example, elk that are found in timber, the model would adjust that estimate higher. Elk that are found in the open, fairly high likelihood we see them all. And so this model is taking into account those and other factors. You will see for 2021 through 2023, that model predicted a fairly stable population. We saw the 2024 survey, we saw quite a bit of an uptick, and in this most recent year, we saw a downtrend. I certainly don't believe that the uptick we saw last year, that it went as high as it actually did, and I also don't think that the downturn that we saw this year is reflective of what actually happened to the population. It's an artifact of what we saw, and so the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. When we look at population growth trends, you'll notice from the graph there on the left, we have a bit of a yo-yo at times, and so that's not necessarily uncommon in wildlife populations, but it is a little bit more erratic in some cases than I would typically expect to see. If we look at the 3 most recent years, we're averaging roughly, or we're expected to have roughly an 8% population growth rate. I want to draw a little bit of attention to cow-calf ratios. So we do fall surveys from the ground. We also are able to collect cow-calf ratios from the air when we do those surveys as well. And in particular, drawing attention to 2024. So for both our ground-based survey and our aerial survey, those were the lowest ratios that we've observed in the last 5 years. So again, you'll notice that through time, there is quite a bit of fluctuation. When we compare that to other eastern states with elk populations, we can see that on average, when we look across time, we're somewhere kind of floating right in the middle. But I would argue in some cases, sometimes our lows seem to be lower than what other places are experiencing. One of the things that we've been dealing with for quite a while here is brainworm, or meningeal worm, and it's a parasite that deer seem to tolerate quite well. Elk don't necessarily tolerate it as well. West Virginia, over the last few years, has experienced quite a few issues with it, and it's impacting their reintroduction effort. But we're also starting to hear more reports from states like Wisconsin and Kentucky that they're also seeing more impacts from it than they were seeing in previous years. We're not entirely sure why. There's some research that's ongoing, but it's something that we're certainly keeping an eye on. We look at our bull-to-cow ratio. So no doubt, through just actual visual observations, we're definitely seeing an increasing number of bulls on the landscape. But I would argue, again, primarily based on visual observations, that the number of prime age bulls, so I consider those 7 to 9 years of age, is fairly stable to maybe slightly decreasing in overall number. And one of the benefits that we get by having prime age bulls, in theory, would be a condensed breeding season. It's also, from a genetic standpoint, it's good to keep that diversity. And so I would like to see there be more prime age bulls in overall number on the landscape. So with that said, again, I do think that we are on a good trend as far as the bull-to-cow ratio. I don't think we're really dipping down anymore. We're kind of on a slowly growing trend, which in theory should mean that as overall bull numbers increase, prime age bull numbers should also be ticking up slowly at the same time. So with that, the permit quota recommendation for this year is 5 antlered elk permits. As we've done in the past, at least 10%. So in this case, at least 1 permit would be awarded to qualifying resident landowners. We are not recommending an antlerless permit quota for 2025. The application period would be the same as for bear, so May 1st through the 31st, and we'd make sure that results are available by July 1st, 2025. Our season date recommendation, and again, the same permit is valid for both portions. So the archery portion would be October 18th through the 26th, and the recommendation for the firearms portion is December 13th through the 21st. As we're looking forward or looking to the future, so we are continuing to pursue alternative monitoring methods. We don't like to put all of our eggs in one basket, so looking across a variety of different tools and techniques. We're also working on working with biometricians internally to develop a model that factors in multiple different monitoring techniques and has them work together instead of really and truly just kind of being used individually. And so we're trying to work more towards an integrated model. We're also continuing to do work to try and understand all the different factors, brainworm being one of the examples of things that are impacting our current population trajectory. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Aaron, thank you for that presentation. Commission, any questions for Aaron? Mark?
Just a quick question, looking at both your accounting model and also on your aerial survey. And I think our benchmark for elk was around 100 about 10 years ago. Does that sound about right?
So at the end of our reintroduction effort in 2013,
Yeah.
we estimated a population of roughly 100 at that time.
Okay, all right. So we're 10 years plus beyond that time. And so we're still looking right around 300, maybe 350?
Correct, yeah, we're probably somewhere between the upper 200s to maybe as high as the mid
Yeah.
the mid 300s.
Seems like that number ought to be higher.
So I don't necessarily disagree. So I do think, I had expected to see population growth rates be higher than they have been, but I think the reality is that we do have a population that is growing slower and in some years maybe fairly stagnant compared to what, again, I would have expected to see. And we're not entirely sure what all of the impacting factors are. I have no doubt that in some years it's probably calf survival, in other years it's probably also dealing with pregnancy status with cows. And so that kind of combination is probably one of the leading drivers. Brainworm and some other confounders that are on its side are probably also not helping the situation.
Right. Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Commission, any other questions for Aaron?
I'll try to keep it short, just, obviously, I'm very interested in the elk, but, Mark kind of hit on the population numbers. I mean, in a unhunted elk herd, you get about a 0.8% calf per cow, is what you're predicting. They're very productive if they're not hunted. And I'm curious, first off, any treatment options for these elk for meningeal worm or anything like that? Or can we do any vaccinating or anything like that potentially?
So brainworm is a parasite that can absolutely be treated for. So in captive facilities, they would probably either use some combination of a high-dose ivermectin or fembendazole, which accumulates, and then once you reach a certain level, it'll then kill that parasite. And that's something it's either done through injection or with fembendazole is usually done as a powder or a medicated feed. Those are options, but I guess I would argue from an ecological standpoint, given that in an absolute worst case scenario, we have a stable population, I argue that it probably is growing, albeit very slowly. It's a wild free-range population, and so as long as we're still seeing positive signs of growth, treating it more like it's a domestic livestock is risky. I would also argue in some cases there's some evidence that when we look at genetics through time, if we have individuals in the population for whatever reason that are more susceptible to brainworm, we don't necessarily want to continue or I don't want to say we don't want to eliminate that genetic strain, but we don't want it to persist, because at some point in time when you stop treating that parasite, those animals now are going to likely die at much higher numbers because you've artificially kept them in the gene pool. And so through time, allowing the elk that are here in Missouri to truly evolve and adapt to the conditions that they're, and in this case, brainworm being a negative, that they are subjected to, have them evolve similar to what white-tailed deer did and have it play a lesser role than kind of propping it up until maybe you pull the stool out and it falls down.
Well, and we have a refuge area there at Peck, I believe, we don't allow any hunting. I mean,
That is correct.
if we reevaluated that approach, that would be a perfect area to do that, because those elk are wintering there, I think, pretty typical and that sort of thing. But that's your deal. I'm just, looking at some options on that, because I was thinking, from a parasite standpoint, there was a treatment modality of them. The slide that got my attention was this elk population estimated from a counting model. And it showed this great growth, which you already pointed out that you don't think that's valid. And, the flat area between 24, 25, that's concerning, because it's just like it just stopped on that. I know I read some of the minutes on some of the Regs committee, and, one of the public concerns was seeing, meningeal infected elk, because they have some other characteristics to them. But whenever we have those animals that we know died from meningeal, I'm sure you're doing an autopsy or something on them, but are you aging those animals? You get a feel for, is there an age group when they're getting hit or something like that? Or you got any feel for that?
Yes, so depending on the individual, sometimes we will do a full body necropsy, depending on, given that there are no collars out. Some of our elk, by the time we discover them, are in later stages of decomposition. I will say we do test everyone that we can get viable samples for CWD, regardless of age on elk. When it comes specifically for aging, we age pretty much every elk that we can get our hands on, dead or alive. When we look at those that are more likely to be impacted by brainworm, we won't see any brainworm-related mortality until at least 6 months of age. Between 6 months and somewhere between 1.5 years and 2 years of age is when we see the biggest impact. While we do have animals that are older than 2 or 3, and some that do get into older age classes that start developing symptoms or signs of brainworm, the overwhelming majority seem to be in that 6 month to 1.5 years to 2 years of age range. Once they get past that, their susceptibility seems to go way down.
Really? Interesting. Well, I mean, it looks to me like on your population model, your biggest limiting factor is probably the meningeal worm. I mean, I think you recognize that problem.
It's certainly not helping anything, but it's also, it's a parasite that is incredibly common on the landscape. We've done work previously looking at what percentage of the deer in the area have it, and depending on the year and where they were sampled from, it's been as high as 40 to 80% of the deer have the parasite, and again, are perfectly fine with it. So it's just a very common parasite found basically wherever whitetails and some form of moisture exist. That parasite, because of the slug and snail populations, will do quite well.
So, one last question, and I'll leave it alone. I know Margie's going to skin me if I don't shut up. So, but.
I went to a tanning workshop recently. No,
So-
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The host is a snail, is that correct? So how are they ingesting that? I mean, what's the cycle there?
Yeah, so in all transparency, I'm impressed by how complicated the parasite's life cycle is for it to be as successful as it is. A deer and elk poops out the parasite, a slug or snail then slimes or snails, I don't know what to call their movement, moves over it. That parasite goes from the poop into the foot of the slug or snail. Then a deer and elk accidentally ingests the slug or snail while foraging. That goes into the digestive tract. That parasite then moves from the digestive system into the bloodstream, works its way to the spinal column, ultimately works its way to the brain, goes through a few more cycles, works from the brain into the lungs, gets coughed up, swallowed, back into the gut, pooped out, cycle continues.
So it's an inadvertent ingestion of the snail then?
It is, yes.
Yeah,
Crazy.
interesting.
Cycle of life.
Okay.
Fascinating. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely.
I love
Aaron,
that
we
stuff.
covered ground we didn't expect to cover. Thank you so much for that presentation. Deputy Director.
Thank you, Aaron. Madam Chair, I now request commission approval of the 2025 elk hunting season dates and permit quota as presented and described in your regulations packet.
Do we have a motion to approve staff's recommendations?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
No change. No change.
Excellent. All in
All done.
favor?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Working our way through, we're almost there. Commissioners, as you know, the department's schedule for setting migratory bird and waterfowl hunting regulations is governed by a timeline established by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Reed Viget is here today to provide an overview of these recommendations. Reed earned a bachelor's in forest wildlife management from Stephen F. Austin University in 2020 with a minor in spatial science. He also earned a master's in natural resources from the University of Missouri in 2023, focusing on the use of drones and artificial intelligence to quantify waterfowl on MDC intensively managed wetland areas. Prior to joining MDC as the Migratory Game Bird Program Coordinator in October 2024, Reed participated in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's waterfowl breeding population and habitat surveys in Canada and worked as a banding crew lead for the Mississippi Flyway Banding Station. Reed, the podium is yours.
Do it.
Good morning, Commission.
Hi,
Good morning,
Reed.
Director. Thank you guys for having me. As mentioned, I'm here today to present the recommendations for the 25-2026 migratory game bird seasons. So unfortunately, unlike the last two recommendations, I have a lot more than one species to cover. So it'll be fairly brief for each species, but we'll get through them all. All right, so first I'd like to start off with some acknowledgements. There's a lot of work that goes into migratory bird monitoring. Regional and statewide management branches band a lot of birds every year, over 4,000 between geese, dove, and wood ducks in the state. We also collect hunter participation data on our wetlands. We send out surveys. They also help me conduct waterfowl counts throughout the spring or throughout the fall and winter. In the winter, in mid-January, the Protection Branch helps out a lot with our midwinter survey, which is part of a federal survey as well. And then, our communications branch relays all of this information to the public so they can track migration every year. And then our hunters and citizen scientists, they report their band recoveries to help with federal population estimates. They send in wings to Fish and Wildlife Service to look at estimate hunter numbers, estimate hunter harvest, complete with harvest diaries, and then postseason surveys that the department sends out. So a quick outline for the presentation today. I'll talk about some upcoming migratory game bird actions that we have going on, and then I'll give recommendations for our webless migratory game birds, our ducks, and then finally our geese. And so currently we're in the middle of flying our breeding population of Canada goose survey to get a resident population for the state. That goes into the Mississippi flyway population estimate as well. In the spring, in June, July, and August, we'll start our banding for dove and waterfowl. That includes geese and wood ducks in the state. We'll also be sending crew members and crew leads up to the Dakotas as part of the Mississippi Flyway Council banding program. So they'll be able to get a lot of experience banding other species of ducks and learn how to age and sex those ones when everything looks the same and it's all brown prior to hunting season. There will be some upcoming recommendations from the program at the May Commission meeting that has to do with our 2026 to 2030 duck season dates and zone boundaries. We've hosted 13 public input meetings around the state in January and February, and thanks Commissioner Wagner for attending some of those. We also sent out a lot of online and mail surveys to our hunters to gather input. So all of that's currently being compiled. It'll be presented to regulations in the April meeting next week, and then it'll be presented to the commission in May. And so with that, we'll get started with our webless migratory game bird recommendations. This involves everything from dove, rail, snipe, woodcock, and coots, all fall under the webless category. So beginning with the dove, we fall into the central management unit. So there's 3 management units. Missouri is in the central management unit. So our latest population estimate was 177.7 million. That's well above the population threshold of 59.3 million to have a liberal season for our dove season. So we get 90 days and 15 bird bag limits. And so with that, for the 2025 season recommendation, it's no change from past seasons. So open as early as we can on September 1st and run for the 90 continuous days through November 29th. And again, the daily bag limit of 15 dove, and that's just all dove species combined. So it's mainly going to be mourning dove, but there have been more and more Eurasian collared doves showing up in the state. So that's all dove species combined. So moving on next to then the woodcock harvest strategy. So this is based off of a call count survey conducted in breeding states. And so we fall into the management unit that had, in this last year, it was 2.62 birds per breeding route survey. That's how the population is estimated. So we fall into a 45-day season with a 3 bird per day bag limit. And so with that, last year, I believe, was the first year we modified the woodcock season just a little bit, so we moved it back a few days. So this year, we're sticking to that with the October 18th opening through December 1st. And again, the daily bag limit of 3 and the possession limit 3 times that with 9. And so then going into the remaining webless migratory game birds, so these are a little bit less monitored. We don't necessarily have exact population estimates and surveys for them on a federal scale. But that being said, they're also very, very low on the harvest estimates and not very sought after by hunters. So our Sora and Virginia rail season opens September 1st through November 9th with a daily bag limit of 25. Our snipe season opens September 1st through December 16th with the daily bag limit of 8. And then our coots will be the same as the duck season dates for their respective zones. And then the daily bag limit will be 15 coots with the possession limit 3 times that at 45. So then finally moving on to waterfowl, so this will be the ducks and geese. So starting all the information that goes into what makes up the waterfowl regulations on the federal scale, and then what we use as the flyway, and finally Missouri to set the limits. So our 2024 breeding waterfowl status, the prairies were dry. There were some hot, nice spots in the Dakotas where there was a lot of water, but overall Prairie Canada was pretty dry during the breeding survey. Come fall, looking at, this is the end of November drought monitor. At that point, Missouri was a little bit dry, but not too dry. We got quite a bit of rain, I think, in late October, early November, just right at the beginning of waterfowl season. That helped out quite a bit. But overall, Missouri was not super dry throughout duck season. So that being said, despite the prairies being pretty dry, the May pond count was actually up from 2023, a decrease of 1% from the long-term average, so really right about average at 5.2 million May ponds. And then the total duck breeding population was 5% increase from 2023, although we are still below the long-term average by a little bit, and the total duck breeding population was 34 million ducks. And so that's just the overall total kind of picture of where we're at with ducks. I'm going to kind of go through our early special season first, and then we'll get back to regular duck season. But so first, our blue-winged teal season. So we have a September blue-winged teal season option from Fish and Wildlife Service. We were down significantly in 2023. Likely due to those dry conditions on the prairies. Blue-winged teal tend to be very fluctuating in population with the conditions on the prairies. So we fell below our threshold for the full 16-day teal season, so at 4.59 million. And so with that, the September teal season recommendation, typically we recommend opening the first Saturday after Labor Day. However, this year with the teal season being shortened by essentially a week, 16 days down to 9 days, I looked at when blue-winged teal were most abundant, and it was mid to late September. And then harvest also occurred more in that kind of second half of a typical blue-winged teal season than the first half. So with that, I'm recommending opening the second Saturday in September. And so what those dates look like this year for the teal season in September is open on September 13th through the 21st. And that's still going to be a 6 teal per day daily bag limit. And just a reminder there, the September teal season shooting hours is sunrise to sunset. Regular duck season, we do the 30 minutes before sunrise. The reason we start at sunrise is to minimize the accidental take of other species of birds that show up in September in Missouri. We do have quite a few other species of ducks tend to start trickling in September, so we want to try and reduce that incidental take. And so moving on to regular duck season now. So the federal framework, we have 3 different options for open seasons and then our closed season depending on where the mallard population and the May pond counts fall. We've been fortunate for a very long period now to have the 60-day seasons with 6 birds per day, and 4 of those can be mallards. And then we can open no earlier than the Saturday nearest September 24th. Doesn't really affect us in Missouri. There's not a big push for opening that early, but we can close no later than January 31st. And so that's so that when ducks get into their pair bonds and they start making their migration back north, we're not still interfering with those pair bonds and that breeding activity. And so the matrix comes from data input from hunter harvest, duck banding, as well as the population and May pond count to predict the fall flight and what we can expect hunter harvest to occur. And so we had 6.6 million mallards and we had 5.2 million May ponds this past year. And so with that, we're able to still fall into that liberal season of the 60-day season with 6 birds per day. So our 21 to 2025 duck season structure, with the zone boundaries, the north zone opens to Saturday nearest to October 31st. The middle zone was the first Saturday in November, and then the south zone opens on Thanksgiving Day. And so following those season structures, season date formulas, and zone boundaries, so the north zone will be November 1st to December 30th. The middle zone, November 1st to November 9th, and then we close for 5 days, and then we open the 15th through January 4th. And then the south zone will be the 27th, which is Thanksgiving Day, through November 30th, and December 7th through January 31st to capture that as late as you can hunt option in the south zone, which is preferred. And so then we also have the option for youth hunts, and so with that we do try and do the weekend before regular duck season, as long as it does not interfere with youth deer season. And so this year it does not, and so October 25th to the 26th, for the north and middle zones, and then for the south zone we're looking at November 22nd to November 23rd. And so going on to the 25 to 2026 bag limits, so there has been one change federally in the bag limits. So everything else stays the same, but the pintail is increased from 1 to 3. And so a lot of that came from new models, new population estimates, new harvest estimates, some simulation data to figure out what harvest would look like on the pintails, what's driving their population. And it came out that we can increase the pintail limit to 3. And so it's part of a 3-year interim strategy. So once we have data on what a 3 pintail daily bag limit looks like harvest-wise for 3 years and the impacts of the population, Fish and Wildlife Service and the flyways are going to reevaluate the harvest strategy, make sure that harvest looks like what we expected it to look like, and make sure that the population is still doing well. And then that will either be revised as needed, or it will kind of go into that final framework strategy phase. And so, and then again, with all of that, the possession limit again for migratory birds, 3 times the daily bag limit. So moving on to goose status and recommendations. So starting with Canada geese, so there's 3 populations of Canada geese that come through the flyway that we have to base our harvest strategy around. The first one being Missouri's breeding Canada geese. So we have a state population goal of 40 to 70,000 breeding Canada geese in the state, and you can see that over time it's overall kind of trended fairly stable with a lot of variation between years in the breeding population. Moving on to the Mississippi flyway temperate nesting or giant Canada geese. So this is what a lot of states kind of consider their early season local populations that then migrate through once it gets cold enough in the flyway. We had a little bit of a decrease from 2023, but we're still kind of right there in the threshold of that 1.2 to 1.4 million population level goal of the flyway. Finally, we have our interior Canada goose population, or the southern Hudson Bay breeding population. And so that's kind of our Arctic Canada geese that come down from northern Manitoba and the southern Hudson Bay. And so this population, the goal of this population is just kind of to remain stable and not start looking at a decreasing population. And so you can see, over the last 4 years, it's been a fairly stable population estimate. So moving on to white-fronted goose population status, just since we kind of run a concurrent goose season, I'll go through all the goose population statuses. So the last estimate was 1.34 million. That was about a 59% decrease from 2021. So these come from band recovery estimates versus kind of aerial survey flights. But you can see there that the population does look like it's declined a decent amount. But, kind of being that they're band recoveries, there's also a little bit delay in the data. So that's why it looks like, well, we don't have an estimate since 2022. Well, that's because we have to get through the hunting season and look at band recoveries. And the same thing kind of goes for the light goose population status. And so this is the mid-continent light goose population, which is what comes through Missouri. The last estimate was 4.7 million, which is the first time in a very long time that the estimate has been below the population goal of 5 million. And just the 5 million is kind of what we wanted as a cap when we introduced the light goose conservation order and everything like that. And then Ross's geese, it's also declined. It's kind of a small, very similar species to the snow goose that comes through the state. So their population's quite a bit lower, but still above their population goal. And so with all those goose population stats, the federal framework allows for a Canada goose season that's 107 days long. We can hunt as early as September 1st through the 15th of February, and we can have up to a 5-bird daily bag limit. The white-fronted goose, depending on your daily bag limit, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, you can either have 107, 88, or 74-day seasons. So the more you increase your bag limit, the shorter your white-fronted goose season can be. And so with that, the Canada Goose season recommendations, similar to previous years, the 9-day early Canada Goose season opening the first Saturday in October, so October 4th to 12th. And then our 88-day concurrent regular goose season, November 11th to February 6th. So that's going to be the 2 white-fronted geese, which makes that 88-day season, 3 Canada geese. And the reason for the 3 Canada goose daily bag limit is because of those kind of temperate breeding and Arctic nesting goose populations that are stable for the Canada goose. We don't want to increase harvest of those by increasing the daily bag limit. And then 20 light geese with no possession limit. So again, kind of no change to any of the goose recommendations. And so that's where those fall into. And so then continuing on with geese, going to the light goose conservation order. So the first thing is all other waterfowl seasons must be closed. So we can't open a light goose conservation order while other goose species or duck seasons are open. And so with that, we open it February 7th, the day after regular goose season ends, and run through April 30th, which is the latest we can run it. And by, it keeps the regular goose season earlier than that February 15th deadline, but that allows that more opportunity in the conservation order. So it's kind of balancing the trade-offs between the late regular goose season and starting the light goose conservation order before all the snow geese can move through the state and we lose a lot of hunting opportunity. And so then we also have the extended falconry seasons of February 11th to March 10th, which again, there's no change. The only change to falconry dates is to align early teal season falconry with the new 9-day season. Otherwise, there's no change to those recommendations. So overall, as a summary, because that was a lot, the season dates and bag limits for the webless game birds are the same as in 2024, 2025. The September teal season, again, we modified for that 9-day season to start it the second Saturday of September and then shorten it to 9 days. Our season dates for duck and geese were adjusted to the season date formula set from 2021 to 2025. And then the bag limits are the same except for the pintail, which is thanks to that new harvest strategy, which is now recommended to be 3. And yeah, as I mentioned, except for adjustment for teal season, the falconry season dates and limits are the same. And so with that, I'll take questions.
Excellent, thank you, Reed. Commission, any questions for Reed regarding this year's upcoming waterfowl season?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't have a question, but Reed, I just want to acknowledge you and the work that you and your team did throughout the state with the season and zone workshops, as you mentioned. I attended a few of those. We talked about that in February, but it was a chance for me to see hands-on this process where I arrived and sat in the back and observed it, and it was really enlightening, and the public should have great confidence that much research and data and professionalism has gone into this process, which will be revealed in May. So congratulations to you and your team, and thank you.
Okay,
Excellent comment.
great.
Thank you, Reed
Ray,
and
for
staff.
taking those. How
Yeah.
large is your team here?
Sorry, how
How-
large
what-
is the
Yeah,
team?
how many folks are on your team, Reed?
Yeah, so the Migratory Game Bird Working Group is, I think it's 9 people
Okay.
currently. We have protection, communications, educations, our R3 coordinators on it. But with the season date and zone boundary workshops, I mean, that was all thanks to Regional Resource Management. I could not have done that without them.
Sure.
They set all of the workshops up. All I had to do was show up and present, so.
Well, but you had to
big
lead
thanks
the
to
effort
them.
anyway.
Made the effort. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Steve?
Just, as you know, we sent out a survey on resident, non-resident participation for deer, turkey, waterfowl. I'm sure you're very aware of that. And one of the concerns I've heard expressed, and I'd like to have just your opinion, kind of, the duck season that opens up in the southern zones, opens on 11/27, I believe. Is that, one of the concerns I've heard expressed is that opens like a few days or a week earlier than Arkansas. We end up getting excessive non-resident pressure during that, particularly in the southern zone. Can you give me any insight on that, or perception, or
Sure.
what your experience is?
Yeah, so, it's not actually the southern zone. Our south zone actually opens a little bit later. Arkansas usually opens the weekend before Thanksgiving, and then we open on Thanksgiving. It's the middle zone in southeast Missouri, drops pretty significantly far south in the state, and that's the one that opens in early November. And so that's, it is very close to
Big hill.
Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas. And that zone does open quite a bit earlier than the surrounding states. You'll see when I present the recommendations in May, we do still have a lot of birds that go into that area of the state early, and the hunters like to target those birds. It does provide more opportunity maybe for the surrounding residents. I did look at those 3 conservation areas, Duck Creek, Otter Slough, and 10 Mile Pond, to see if there was, more non-resident participation earlier in the season versus later. And it didn't really pan out. That's kind of what we expected to see. But our green card data from those areas didn't really indicate that that's actually what's going on. So, I mean, I was surprised at that, I will admit that, but it didn't actually kind of show that that's what's going on, that there really wasn't a big push from non-residents earlier in our season before the surrounding states open up.
So now the green cards in those intensively managed waterfowl areas, Green Pond, 10 Mile Pond, et cetera, they're a true reflection of who the actual hunters were, or is it a group?
So each individual hunter fills out a card, and then, from that, they have their permit number and everything on it, and so we're able to then use that permit number to relate back to whether it was purchased for a non-resident permit or a resident permit. And so we do look at individual hunters, so we can look at it on the basis of individual hunters or by party. I looked at it on the basis of party, because whether you have 1 person in your party or 4 people in your party, you're drawing for 1 spot on the area. So we did find that non-resident parties had more people that tended to be in their parties than the resident parties. But overall, the proportion of parties didn't really change depending on the time of year.
And that's really good to hear. Do you have any suggestions on how to communicate the real information to our resident hunters? Because like you said, you were surprised,
Right.
and that's a concern I've heard.
Yeah,
And
other
it's nice
people
to
were
hear that we're
surprised.
looking at it, but the communication with the public is probably more important than the statistics.
Yes, and so, and honestly, we need to communicate it with our staff too, because our staff expected to see the same thing I did, and they kind of think that, and they also question some of the kind of then results then. So we also need to do a better job of communicating with our staff. But yeah, we do need to communicate it for sure with the public better. And some of it too depends on areas, like when I was, and what qualifies as a resident as well. When I was in grad school at Mizzou, I had Texas license plates on my truck for a number of years that was going down to Eagle Bluffs almost every morning. But I qualified for resident permits, so it kind of, you know, there is that distinction as well.
Okay, thank you. Really big presentation, a lot of information.
Reed, I just have one question. In the past, we've talked about the impact of bird flu on our overall migratory bird populations. Anything to share there?
Yeah, so overall, bird flu, if it's going to be impacting a species on population level, it would be the snow geese. Those are the ones that in the fall seem to have the highest mortality rates due to bird flu. It is common in other species, so that's not to say it doesn't exist, it just doesn't impact other species the same way. We don't know, you know, the snow goose population graph that I showed, there's been a decline for quite some time now. We don't anticipate it's directly related to bird flu just because it started before a lot of the die-offs and a lot of the high-path avian influenza that came through post kind of COVID. It was
Right.
2022, I think, was the first big year of that. So we don't really think that that population decline is due to that, and we're not really seeing enough other mortality on the landscape to really think that any population declines are occurring because of it.
Excellent. Thank you. Reed, thank you so much for your presentation. Deputy Director.
Thank you, Reed. Madam Chair, at this point, I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.440, migratory game bird and waterfowl seasons and limits, as presented by Reed and detailed in your regulations packet.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, the last recommendation is in the form of a proposed amendment. As a reminder, your approval of this proposed amendment signifies the first step in the Department of Conservation's rulemaking process. Following your vote today, if approved, the proposed rulemaking will be filed with the Secretary of State's office. After publication in the Missouri Register, the proposal will be open for a 30-day formal public comment period. Any comments received will be compiled and presented as part of the formal order of rulemaking for commission consideration at your meeting in July. The anticipated effective date of these changes is October 30th, 2025, unless otherwise noted. Proposed changes to 3 CSR 10-4.130, owner may protect property, public safety, will allow property owners to capture or kill wildlife with some exceptions to prevent damage with prior authorization from an agent of the department. This option will be available only when other property protection measures have failed or there is good reason to believe such measures are impractical or would be unsuccessful. Madam Chair, I request approval of this proposed amendment as described.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the good reason rule? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. A summary of the general public comments received since the last Regulation Committee report is included in your regulations report in my February regulations report. Madam Chair, unless you or members of the commission have questions, this concludes the regulations report.
Any questions for Deputy Director Conley? Great job. Thank you, Deputy Director.
Thank you.
Well done, Laura.
We will transition to Administration and Budget with a presentation from Melanie Crane, our Chief Budget Officer. Melanie, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be presenting the fiscal year 2025 financial summary report through February 2025. The report has been provided in your advanced materials. That's yesterday's. That's yesterday's.
Y'all all wanted a recap of our workshop yesterday, didn't you? I beg your pardon? Yes, we will adjourn for a 5-minute break. break, and we'll come right back with
That was
Melanie's
good
presentation.
timing, Mel.
Thank you all.
Good time. That's perfect. Got some stuff from
Courtesy
Aaron on
to me,
some
I'd like-
landing.
You learn a lot.
What is this? Oh. We are going to get back assembled. Because we are already off schedule, but we are right on target. So that's where we are. Melanie, you are all queued up now to give us our financial report.
Yes, now I will present the financial summary for February. That looks better, yeah. Total revenues in fiscal year 25 through February were 2.4% higher than fiscal year 24 and 1.1% above expectations for this point in the fiscal year. Conservation sales tax receipts were in line with the same time period in 24 and also in line with expectations. Permit revenues were 6.5% higher than February of last year and in line with expectations. The number of monetary hunting and fishing permits sold in the first 8 months of fiscal year 25 were 36,172, lower than the previous fiscal year. Federal reimbursements were 9.7% higher than this time last year and 3.3% above expectations. Federal reimbursements for fiscal year 25 through February represent approximately 17.2% of total revenues. Other revenue sources for the first 8 months of fiscal year 25 were 8.8% lower than this point last fiscal year and 16.7% lower than expectations. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on revenues before we move on to expenditures.
Questions for Melanie on department revenues? I think you can proceed.
Okay. Total expenditures for the first 8 months of fiscal year 25 were 2.5% higher than the first 8 months of fiscal year 24 and 2.2% below expectations. Personal service disbursements were 7.4% above the previous fiscal year and 1.2% below expectations through February 2025. Expenses were 5.4% higher than fiscal year 24 and 3.7% below expectations for the first 8 months of fiscal year 25. Equipment disbursements were 47.6% lower than fiscal year 24 to date and 5.4% below expectations. Total capital disbursements were 23.7% higher than the previous fiscal year through February and 8.1% below the fiscal year 24 date. Large construction payments in February included Bennett Spring Fish Hatchery renovations, the August A. Bush Memorial Conservation Area exterior building renovations, the Bob Brown Conservation Area wetland pump replacement, Fountain Grove Conservation Area Golden Anniversary Wetland Renovation Phase 2 Pump Station Replacement, and the Columbia Bottom Road relocation. Land acquisitions in February included a 48-acre addition to Blue Springs Conservation Area. Total disbursements for February 2025 were 5.9% higher than the first 8 months of fiscal year '24 and 3.3% below expectations. This concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Commission.
Just, you gave some good example on capital expenditures as far as the 23.7%. On the equipment side, the 47.6, what would be a couple examples of that contributed to that number?
So it's mainly from the first quarter payments from last fiscal year that we made. They were fleet replacements and radio replacements. We had some large expenditures in that first month or two of fiscal year '24.
Okay. Thank you.
Commission, any other questions of Melanie? Melanie, thank you for that presentation.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to our Human Resources branch, we have a Conservation Employees Benefit Plan update given by Tom Neubauer. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the Commission and the Director. The Conservation Employees Benefits Plan Trust Fund Board, with the Conservation Commission's support, has taken actions in recent years to better align plan income with projected claim expense. These actions have resulted in additional income to the plan, including the Commission's $2 million infusion to the plan in April of 2024, premium increases to offset claim trend, and rate tier restructuring. Commission and member premium increases of approximately 10% in the 2024 plan year accounted for an approximate $4 million increase in plan income. The bullet point in your materials was an error, but those are the correct numbers that are on the variance report that you received, so I apologize for that. An overall premium increase of 15% was recommended and approved for the 2025 planned year. And just a reminder, that is a calendar year for the plan, not the July through June fiscal year that the Commission operates with. So in addition to that, we did some restructuring of rate tiers in our dependent coverage categories. Those changes are expected to increase plan revenues by an estimated $3.6 million in calendar year 25. With the assistance of the plan's consultant, WTW, the board has taken action to offset projected rising claim costs through premium increases based on plan trend. When comparing net incomes for the 2023 and 2024 plan years, plan income increased from a net loss of $1.25 million at the end of 2023 to a net income of $448,000 in 2024. The 2024 net income does not include the $2 million infusion provided by the Commission in April of 2024. When we include the $2 million infusion, the planned year closed with a fund balance of $6.7 million, which is an increase of approximately 57% when compared with the $4.3 million balance for the same period in 2023. In 2024, medical claims increased almost $1.1 million, or about 7.5%. And prescription claims rose to an estimated $1 million, or about 10% when we compare the two plan years. While specialty prescription usage continues to play a large role in these growing costs, overall prescription spend increased significantly with prescriptions for the post-65, or our Medicare primary retirees. They made up about 661,000 of that increase in prescriptions, where our non-Medicare retirees and active employees resulted in about $367,000 of that increase. While the board recognizes that claims continue to increase, actions continue to be taken to ensure plan sustainability by ensuring income continues to exceed expenses for the 2025 plan year and beyond. The board will also monitor the impact of adding the Medicare Advantage plan to post-65 retirees, which, as you recall, went into effect in January 1st of this year. Additional plan design adjustments and overall cost impacts continue to be considered as we embark on the request for proposal process for a medical plan administrator, including a medical network for all member categories for the 2026 plan year, and we'll be exploring options for improving the Medicare Advantage plan offering for next year as well. That concludes my comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tom, thank you so much for that update. Commission, questions for Tom? Mark?
Your last comment, you mentioned the RFP you're going to be sending out. What's the
sir.
timing? That's for 26, I understand.
Correct.
What's your timing on releasing that?
So that's already been sent out, and we should be getting bids in the next couple weeks, Sue? Yeah.
Okay, okay. And then evaluate at that time, I assume.
Correct. So the board would evaluate and then bring our recommendations to the commission for the selected vendor in line with the revised trust agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commission, any other questions? Steve?
I do, and possibly the question I have, I may not understand some aspect of it, so if you could help me a little bit. The part that I'm interested in, there's two things, but the first one has to do with the premium increases. I know that in '24, you said there was about a 10% increase, but when I asked the question on that, there was a differentiation between what the percentages were. For the retirees, it was 11.8, pre-65 retirees, 6.6, and active, it was 3.7. That's what was presented in December.
Right?
And so, knowing that there was a differentiation between the groups here and then this 15% that's in this report, how is that presented? Is there a differentiation in that, or is that across the board for all employees? Because that's what this, that's what the employees and the retirees are going to be interested in. How does it affect their pocketbook?
Right.
And
So-
so can you give an explanation of that?
Sure. So that's actually for the 2025 plan year that we're in right now. So effective for January 1st, and we did, and can provide it again, we did provide a paper. So when we looked at projected claims versus projected income for this plan year, we needed about 15.4% increase in total income to the plan. So part of that was acquired through re-tiering. Again, if you recall from our conversation at the last commission meeting, we discovered that for the family plan members and the member and spouse groups, we were not gathering enough income for those two groups based upon claims. So we're going through a 2-year process of re-tiering and making sure those ratios align claims with expenditures for those two. For the re-tiering, that resulted in, as you pointed out, differing levels of increases for certain member categories. So for instance, the active employees, to get to that 15.4% increase in revenue, re-tiering accounted for about 11.7% of that, while the overall inflationary increase was about 3.7. For the retirees and Commissioner, whether it's the retirees without Medicare, again, re-tiering made up about 8.8% of that. And then the inflation part was 6.6. And then for our Medicare folks, the re-tiering made up the smallest part. It was a 3.6% increase in revenue for them, and then an 11.8% increase to their premiums. And again, remember, for our post-65s, those total premiums are significantly lower than our active and our pre-65 group. So the percentage is often higher to get to the cash level we're looking for. But there was definitely, to your point, a differentiation.
So in the 25, 26, whichever one, maybe I'm confused, the 15%, so in the re-tiering, then is there a difference in the premium increases for the different tiers then? Are we going to see that if there is?
So for 26, the board is actually meeting on that in 3 weeks to talk through kind of where we're at with our recommendation based upon projected claims for next calendar year. And you're absolutely right. Once we put together our recommendations for those premium changes, we'd be bringing them to the commission for approval.
Okay, so we'll be seeing that. When would you anticipate we'll see that information?
Depending upon how we get things together, the next commission meeting is May. We should be ready to bring those at that point.
Okay.
Yep.
Second question I had to do with the Medicare Advantage program that we've talked about a lot.
Yep.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I don't remember this, but I was thinking that was a 1-year contract. We had 3 people that bid on it, only one of which would do a mixed group.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that a 1-year contract?
It is a one-year contract.
When does that expire?
End of the calendar year.
End of the calendar
Yep.
year then?
Yep.
So when do we start negotiating that? Because if I remember right, we had a mixed group because that was something that was important to the commission, but there was a real low participation, I think a 7% participation. So do you think that's going to become problematic when we renegotiate that? Or where do you think that'll be, Tom?
So that's part of the discussions with the board as well, Commissioner, is I think there definitely was some confusion during the communication phase of rolling that out, where folks were unsure as to where their coverages would be. So that'll be part of what we're talking with the commission about as well, is recommending changes on that Advantage plan itself, and then having I'd call it a more aggressive communication plan to continue it out. Because to your point, Anthem may come back and say, we're not going to bid on it for the next year. We don't know that yet. Again, we're very early into the plan year, so we'll see where we're at.
Well, and that's what's on my mind and a concern because, with the low participation, you say, well, how many people really want to do this or whatever. And I'm not going to belabor the point, but
Right.
it's kind of it would be nice to have thought through what our options are going to be before we're forced to make a decision.
Correct.
Is what I'm saying.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Excellent. Great discussion. Commission, anything else for Tom? Okay. Tom, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Transitioning to our infrastructure management branch, we have a construction project status report. Linda Logan, welcome.
All right, well, hello, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and
Hello, Linda.
Director Summers. So it was my privilege to give you the major construction project updates for this month. So first, under their maintenance and repair category, on line 8, on the Bush Memorial Conservation Area, the building exterior renovations, we are 90% complete as of date of the report. On line 9, at the Bush Memorial Conservation Area, for the tilt-up wall repairs, we are 95% complete. On line 12, at Whetstone Creek Conservation Area, the design has been completed for this project. And on line 15, at the Conservation Commission headquarters, we are 30% complete. Moving into the rehabilitation category, on line 16, Roaring River Fish Hatchery, there's a bid opening scheduled for April 22nd for the liquid oxygen line project. On line 19, Eagle Bluffs Conservation Area, we have a notice to proceed on March 24th. On line 22, at Shell Osage, for the lake renovation project, construction is just now starting. On line 23, Shell Osage, for the wetland renovation project, we are 9% complete. And at Conservation Commission headquarters site renovation, we are 35% complete on line 24. Moving to the next page. On line 4, Hornersville Swamp Conservation Area, we are 5% complete. That is for the road and parking lot improvements. On line 7 at Columbia Bottoms, the entrance road relocation, we are 95% complete. On line 9 at Roaring River Fish Hatchery, the UV system improvements, we've bid all 3 projects together, so this bid opening again is to schedule for April 22nd. On line 17 at Bennett Springs Fish Hatchery, we are 35% complete. The contractor is working hard on that one. We are making progress. We are still set for our completion date. On line 18 at J. Thad Ray Memorial, the shop addition, we have completed construction on that. And on line 20 at Apple Creek Conservation Area, the notice to proceed is issued for March 5th. So do you have any questions on those?
Any project-specific questions for Linda? Okay, Linda, please proceed.
Okay. All right, so the next item is the infrastructure asset management dashboard. This month we are showing you the water control gates. So currently, right now, we have 6% that are past their expected life. This number, due to all the work that we've done in the last 5 years of wetlands, is this low. So with a 5-year projection, it would be 9% would need replacement if we do nothing. The other item I would like to point out is on the fish propagation dial. The number is lower than it has been in the past. That is due to the flooding. Those assets that were damaged due to the flood that happened earlier this year have been put in the system. As soon as they get repaired, we will adjust that condition rating. So this concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Great report, Linda. Great calling out on the fish propagation meter. Commission, any other questions for Linda? Thank you so much. Moving on to a report from the Realty Committee, Deputy Director Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I have the next 5 agenda items. Seeking commission approval to acquire 15 acres as an addition to LeBark Creek Conservation Area in Jefferson County. It should be noted the Open Space Council is providing $360,000 to help with the acquisition of this tract on this very popular and very diverse conservation area. Commission?
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. The next 3 items will be taken as one action item to acquire properties the department is currently managing for the Nature Conservancy. Acquisition will allow for the department to continue management, but also expand recreational opportunities as through the current cooperative agreement, these areas are closed to hunting and fishing. So the 3 areas is 160 acres in Dade County of Niawatha Prairie Conservation Area, 26 acres in St. Clair County, which is Lichen Glade Conservation Area, and 80 acres in Vernon County, which is the Little Osage Prairie Conservation Area. So seeking commission's approval to take those as one action item.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. Also have 2 disposals for the Commission today. First, seeking Commission approval to dispose of 13.6 acres known as the Capital View Access in Callaway County through the competitive bid process. This area has been closed to misuse and damage to the boat ramp. And this should be noted that just downriver, we do have the Carl Norn access right there at the Highway 5463 bridge that you see when you come into town. So, Commission?
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. That will make some conservation agents very happy to not have to monitor that area anymore. And last disposal is seeking Commission's approval to dispose of 20-acre tract known as the Clark Conservation Area in Clark County via the competitive bid process. This is an isolated tract not located next to the main conservation area, and this area contains no species of conservation concern. Commission?
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Next, we have our Forestry Section Chief, Michael Bill. Welcome, Michael.
Morning. Madam Chair, the Commission, Director Summers, it's my pleasure to present the next agenda item for your consideration. This action item is listed as 15 on your agenda. This is a timber sale in Logan Creek Conservation Area in Reynolds County. If approved, this harvest will help to ensure forest health, reestablish plant and animal habitat, and will address oak decline and overmature forest conditions. As such, request approval to advertise and sell estimated 2,025,598 board feet. Timber located on 388 acres of Compartment 2 of Logan Creek Conservation Area.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Michael, thank you so much. Next, I would call back up Deputy Director Laura Conley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. I have the next two items on your agenda, and it's my pleasure to submit a nomination for the Missouri Conservation Hall of Fame as well as Master Conservationist. So I will start with Agenda Item 17, a nomination for Mr. Ken Babcock for induction into the Conservation Hall of Fame. And I'll provide a brief description of the nomination here, and the full nomination submission is included in your packet. Ken began his career as a waterfowl biologist with the Mississippi Game and Fish Commission before joining MDC in 1970. He excelled in various roles at MDC, including research scientist, assistant wildlife division chief, and ultimately assistant director. Throughout his career at MDC, Ken either led, influenced, or supported initiatives that had transformative implications for the agency. These include his efforts to prioritize the integration of science, resource management, and the public's enjoyment of fish, forest, and wildlife resources, efforts to expand partnerships with state and federal agencies, NGOs, and private landowners, and efforts to implement the objectives outlined in a design for conservation. After retiring from MDC, Ken was recruited by Ducks Unlimited, where he served various regional and national roles, culminating in his role as the Senior Director of Conservation Programs. After his second retirement, Ken looked for new ways to advocate for conservation and agreed to join the ranks as a member of the Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation. Here, Ken was instrumental in leading and reinvigorating fundraising efforts for the foundation. Ken also served as a key force in the foundation's efforts to partner with MDC and the University of Missouri in development of the Johnny Morris Institute for Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems. Ken Babcock's legacy is defined by many things, but perhaps most notably, it is his commitment to collaboration with diverse stakeholders that has ensured long-lasting conservation outcomes and a more enduring conservation ethic among the Missouri public. His lifelong commitment and dedication to stewarding our natural resources make him an exemplary candidate for the Hall of Fame. If approved, presentation of this award will be at a future Conservation Commission meeting or other appropriate event.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well-deserved.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, he is kind of a legend in this business, isn't he?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, well, great that he can receive this acknowledgement and fully support it.
Yep. Fantastic individual, incredible impact. Commission,
May I-
all,
may I-
oh,
may I
absolutely,
also,
Commissioner Wagner.
Second that. Ken was one of the first people I met in my engagement here at the department, and this was really appropriate, and I'm thrilled for Ken and his entire family.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, Commission, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Excellent, thank you. Now, agenda item 18 is the nomination of Dr. Susan Flotter for recognition as a Missouri Master Conservationist. Dr. Flotter is best known for her scholarship on Aldo Leopold. Her seminal book, Thinking Like a Mountain, Aldo Leopold and the Evolution of an Ecological Attitude Towards Deer, Wolves, and Forests in 1974, established her as a leading voice in environmental history. She explored Leopold's ideas about wildlife management, ecological balance, and the ethical relationship between humans and nature, influencing subsequent conservation strategies. Susan played a pivotal role in advocating for the preservation of the state's natural landscapes through her involvement with the MPA and the Missouri Department of Conservation. Her efforts raised awareness about sustainable forest management, water quality, and public land conservation. She also supported state-level initiatives protecting Missouri's rivers, forests, and wildlife. As an influential educator at the University of Missouri, Dr. Flotter inspired generations of students in environmental history and policy. Her leadership extended beyond academia into public service, where she served on numerous conservation boards and commissions, advocating for policies integrating scientific research with conservation practice. Dr. Susan Flotter has been involved with the LED Foundation, owner of the 1,460-acre Pioneer Forest since the 1970s. Over time, she took on significant leadership roles within the foundation, recently stepping down as board president after serving 7 years. Her leadership ensured the foundation remained a model of sustainable land management and responsible forestry practices while fostering public education and awareness about preserving natural landscapes. She's also served on numerous other state-level and national organizations, and I'll share this in closing. Dr. Flotter is a distinguished historian and conservationist whose work has significantly impacted natural resource conservation in Missouri. Her research and advocacy focus on the history of conservation, environmental policy, and the relationship between humans and natural systems. Her efforts have preserved Missouri's natural heritage and fostered public appreciation for conservation. Through her scholarship, advocacy, service, and education, Dr. Flotter has made a lasting impact on Missouri's conservation landscape. Considering these incredible contributions, Dr. Flotter is an excellent candidate for the Master Conservationist Award. And again, if approved, presentation of this award would occur at a future Conservation Commission meeting or other appropriate event.
Commission, do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Did you get that? Steve, second. Any discussion?
No, another legend overdue in this situation. You know, I mean, the time is great that you're doing this, and she's quite a lady.
Absolutely.
Well done, committee, on bringing forward these recommendations. So, calling to a vote, Commission, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the nominators that put a lot of work in bringing these nominations
Yes.
forward. We certainly appreciate that, too.
Look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing them both.
Excellent. Deputy Director Jeffries, you are joining us again for a legislative update.
Back up here again. We got to get this back in order where I'm up. I just stay up here for these two things, so. Yeah, so brief legislative update as we return from spring break. We've been busy with Conservation Day at the Capitol. Conservation Federation and numerous partners are engaged in that. We had the Legislative Sportsman's Caucus Fish Fry this week as well. Here we'll be celebrating Arbor Day, where we provide some free trees to legislators to take home to plant. And then, of course, we have the Governor's Youth Turkey Hunt coming up as well, which is involves the department, our staff, Conservation Federation, and National Wild Turkey Federation. So while we're not having fun at the Capitol, we are tracking several pieces of legislation. Most importantly, obviously, the FY26 budget. We have completed nearly all of our hearings in both the House and the Senate, just working through markup eventually here in the Senate. The House did perfect and third read the FY26 budget. So that will move over to the Senate next week, and we'll start work over there with senators. Also tracking House Joint Resolution 94, filed by Representative Tony Harbison. This would reduce the conservation sales tax from 1/8 to 1/16, and then sunset the tax every 6 years, would have about $100 million fiscal impact to the agency. That bill had a hearing a few weeks ago. There's been no movement at this point. House Bill 563, Representative Boggs' landowner permit bill was assigned to the Senate Agricultural Committee. It has not had a hearing at this point, and we'll be tracking that as well. And then also just to note, House Bill 1343, Representative Harbison's bill that would divert 75% of timber revenues and ag crop revenues to the county and education in the county of origin. That is in the House Government Efficiency Committee. Just to note, looking at the numbers for fiscal year 24, the department had right at $4.7 million in timber revenues and ag crop revenues. That same year, we had $1.8 million in our CART program, $2.5 million in infrastructure grants to counties, $500,000 to rural fire departments, $600,000 in education grants, about $500,000 to counties for low water bridge replacements. We've done 49 low water bridge replacements, and about $1 million in community conservation cost share. That equals up about $6.9 million compared to the $4.7 million that we get through timber and harvest, or through timber revenues as well as ag crop. So that's pretty much my testimony when that bill comes about. Also, we're tracking a piece of legislation that we filed, the agroforestry law of 1990. We're working to repeal that section of statute. That's been assigned or been added to a repeal bill in the Senate, and we'll be tracking that one as well. With that, Commissioners, I'll answer any questions.
Commission, any questions for Deputy Director Jeffries?
Good work.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, TJ, for the work at the Capitol. With no other items of interest, I hereby call us adjourned.
Okay.